Chapter 2706. With the disappearance of the Rain Abbess, the Blue Sky Venerable, Gong Sunji, Su Jiping, and Huang Fugi, the shattered space finally settled down. The ripples of energy that wreaked havoc in outer space gradually subsided, and the cracks in space rapidly closed up as well. Very quickly, this dark and cold space once again returned to its former tranquility. The dazzling and shining light of the stars formed a beautiful spectacle that was intoxicating. The mountain soul of the martial Soul Mountain was like a ghost, flying silently through outer space at high speeds. It rapidly approached the cloud plain. Chu Jian, Yu Chao, Yun Ziding, and Su Qi all looked in the direction of the battle between the Rain Abbess and the Blue Sky Venerable on the mountain soul. All of them were silent. They all had a great question. They were all chaotic primes, so both their vision and senses were extremely great. They could clearly see that Gong Sunji and Sha Yin wanted to deal with the martial soul lineage, while the Rain Abbess fought the Blue Sky Venerable. However, the Rain Abbess actually abandoned the Blue Sky Venerable without any hesitation and turned to deal with Gong Sunji and Sha Yin as if she was afraid that the martial soul lineage would suffer losses. The Rain Abbess' care for the martial soul lineage had actually reached such a level. Chu Jian and the others were all extremely confused. This was because, in their impression, the martial soul lineage had never interacted with the Rain Abbess. They had not even contacted her. Jianqin also had a great question. He could not help but think of the time when he invaded the Cloud Zurge Empire with a heavenly demon religion and was trapped in the formation of Cloud Zurge and Rain Flood in the end. Back then, he and the Grand Elder of the heavenly demon religion, Chengming, had taken away the innate orchid of 5 elements that the Rain Abbess had planted where he cultivated. Afterwards, he encountered an accident when he attempted to devour the spatial insect emperor, and his life was hanging by a thread. In the end, he ended up in the Rain Abbess' hands. In the end, not only did the Rain Abbess not blame him, but she even gave him a fortuitous encounter. She assisted him in refining the soul of the spatial insect emperor, allowing him to comprehend the laws of space. All of this was because of a mysterious person. Even now, Jianqin was unable to confirm the identity of the mysterious person. However, he could tell from the Rain Abbess' words and actions that the mysterious person was definitely related to the martial soul lineage. It was exactly because of this that the Rain Abbess took special care of the martial soul lineage. This care was even greater than the precious innate orchid of 5 elements. At this moment, Han Zong returned to the mountain soul with Sha Yan's corpse. He casually tossed the corpse of a peak 3rd heavenly layer Grand Prime to Jianqin. The people from the martial soul lineage fell rather silent as they stared at Sha Yan's corpse. The person before them was an expert only a step away from becoming a 4th heavenly layer Grand Prime. He was far more powerful than the Grand Primes they had killed on the cloud plain. In the end, Sha Yan's corpse fell into Jianqin's hands as a reserve for the immortal devouring demonic flower. As for the spatial ring on Sha Yan's finger, Jianqin did not take a single cent. The mountain soul of the martial Soul Mountain rapidly moved through outer space. The cloud plain that hovered in outer space grew larger and larger in their eyes. At the same time, the Grand Primes of the 4 Symbols Alliance engaged in an intense battle against Tong Wuming, Lian Wuji, Zhou Jidao, and the Lord of the Heavens Link Peak from the Righteous Alliance in another region of space near the cloud plain. Their battle was extremely intense. The 4 experts of the Righteous Alliance completely lost the upper hand against the people of the 4 Symbols Alliance. They were forced into constant retreat. They were all covered in blood and heavily injured. The Lord of the Heavens Link Peak was the most heavily injured. The power of the curse had already reached his bones and spread towards his soul, causing his body to fester slightly. It was covered by the power of the curse. Now he was burning away his flames of life, squeezing out all the life potential in his body as he fought with his life on the line. As the life potential of his body was drained away, a heavy presence of death appeared on the Lord of the Heavens Link Peak. Even if he managed to survive this battle, it would be very difficult for him to keep his body intact. It was exactly because the Lord of the Heavens Link Peak had sacrificed himself that Tong Wuming, Zhou Zhidao, and Lian Wuji managed to put up some resistance against the encirclement of the 5 experts of the Four Symbols Alliance. I'll keep them busy. You go first. There will be plenty of time in the future. As long as you're still here, you'll rise again sooner or later, the Lord of the Heavens Link Peak said to Tong Wuming and the others secretly as he fought against the gentle breeze ancestor. If this continued, they would be defeated sooner or later. If they did not leave now, it was even possible for them to die here, in a battle between Grand Primes. Unless the disparity in strength was just too great, it would be very difficult to stop one of them from escaping if they wanted to, unless they had special methods. If I flee, my clan will definitely be wiped out by these people. How can I just watch so many of my descendants die to the hands of the Four Symbols Alliance? Said Tong Wuming. Today, I, Lian Wuji, would rather die in battle than flee. Even if I die, I'll drag someone down with me, Lian Wuji roared. The flames on him suddenly surged as he burned his essence, blood, and origin energy without any regard for the price. He was truly putting his life on the line. Perhaps Zhou Zhidao had been influenced by Lian Wuji's words. He immediately made up his mind and was about to burn his essence blood without any regard for the price. However, at this moment he seemed to notice something from the corner of his eye, and he immediately looked over. With that, he immediately became overjoyed, as if he had seen a glimmer of hope in his despair. He could not help but call out, "Look, the Martial Soul Mountain! It's the Martial Soul Mountain! The Martial Soul Mountain has come!" Lian Wuji, Tong Wuming, and the Lord of the Heavens Link Peak all looked over. Indeed, they discovered an illusionary mountain condensed from energy rapidly approaching from afar. Fantastic! The fellows of the Martial Soul lineage have finally come. The Lord of the Heavens Link Peak smiled as if he had been relieved of a great burden. He knew that since the people of the Martial Soul lineage had come, the outcome of the battle had basically been decided. Fellows of the Martial Soul lineage were here. Come deal with these bastards. Lian Wuji roared out. He was extremely excited, almost dancing with joy. First senior brother, you're still injured, so leave the battle here to me, and third junior brother, said Chu Jian from the Mountain Soul. Let's use the Martial Soul Array and end the battle as quickly as possible, suggested the fifth senior sister, Su Qi. She wanted to use the safest method to deal with the enemy. This was because none of them were in peak condition anymore. The heaven-severing technique had drained half of the power of their souls, so it would affect the battle to a certain extent. Excessive depletion of the power of their souls would directly affect their ability to use secret techniques. Han Zong glanced at the cloud plane and shook his head. 8th junior brothers, Tianyuan family, is in danger. It's no longer suitable for us to use the Martial Soul Array. We need to split up. 2nd junior brother, 3rd junior brother, the 3 of us will deal with the Grand Primes of the Four Symbols Alliance. The rest of you will go to the cloud plane. But first senior brother, your wounds. Chapter 2707. With that, Han Zong flew out of the Mountain Soul first, charging into the battlefield aggressively. Behind him, Chu Jian and Yu Chao could only follow helplessly. They were the only 3 9th heavenly layer chaotic primes in the Martial Soul lineage, so only the 3 of them could take part in the battle between Grand Primes. Oh no, the people of the Martial Soul lineage have come. What about the experts from the Desolate Plane? Have they all died? No, that's impossible. The 4 experts from the Desolate Plane possessed such great cultivations. Just 2 of them were at the 4th heavenly layer. It's impossible for them to die with such a powerful lineup. Wu Lu, Gong Ji, Chong Fengyan, and He Dao, who had betrayed them, all became flustered when they saw the 3 of them rapidly approach. Their faces became extremely ugly. They all felt deep fear towards the Martial Soul lineage. This fear was not just because of the Martial Soul lineage's battle prowess, which allowed them to challenge those at a higher level of cultivation. Instead, it was the martial soul force that only the martial soul lineage could use. They were completely powerless against martial soul force. Even for them, the stabbing pain from the attacks on their souls was extremely unpleasant. Moreover, this was not even the secret techniques of the martial soul. The attacks of martial soul secret skills were even more powerful. Every time a martial soul secret skill was used, the powerful attack would cause them to be momentarily stunned. In battles at their level, a single carelessness could affect the outcome. If they lost their focus during battle, they could die. As a result, the peak experts of the Four Symbols Alliance were unwilling to fight against the martial soul lineage after witnessing the power of martial soul force. The risk was just too great. Don't worry. The people of the martial soul lineage are not in peak condition after the previous battle. They're not as powerful as before, the gentle breeze said sternly. The gentle breeze ancestor called out sternly. At a time like this, he needed to boost morale. Otherwise, there would be no point in continuing the final battle that would decide the fate of the Four Symbols Alliance if they were all frightened out of their wits by the martial soul lineage. Fellows of the martial soul lineage, you've come at the perfect time. Go assist Zhou, Zhidao, and Tong Wuming first. Old man can keep them busy for now, Lai Feng Wuji laughed. Lai Yan Wuji laughed loudly. He burned his life essence, paying a great price to obtain great strength. Divine flames surged around him, burning the void red. He was currently fighting against Wu Lu and Gong Ji. He kept two of the Grand Primes of the Four Symbols Alliance busy by himself. Of course, he paid quite the price as well. Han Zong and the other two did not go to assist Lai Yan Wuji. Instead, they went straight for Zhou, Zhidao, and Tong Wuming. Afterwards, the martial soul lineage, the wind ancestor of the heavens, peak, fighting the gentle breeze ancestor's battle. As the strongest person in the Four Symbols Alliance, only Han Zong would have an easier time dealing with the gentle breeze ancestor. Chu Jian and Yu Chao assisted Zhou, Zhidao, and Tong Wuming, fending off Chong Fengyan and He Dao, respectively. You seem to be He Dao from the Dao sect of Ascension, right? Why didn't you just stay in the Righteous Alliance? Why did you have to go to the other side and oppose 8th junior brother? Look at the fates of the other two sections. Not only were their sects destroyed, but they even died. Why bother? Chu Jian arrived before He Dao and giggled. He looked at He Dao like he was looking at a dead man. He Dao's face was extremely sunken. He stared at Chu Jian, and the light in his eyes flickered. He said sternly, "You must have won the battle earlier with great difficulty. You must be heavily injured right now, or there's no need for you to waste words with me." "Although I'm injured, I'm more than enough to deal with a first heavenly layer Grand Prime like you," said Chu Jian. He directly stabbed out with his sword, and martial soul force condensed into a strand of sword chi that adhered to the sword. The moment it came in contact with He Dao, the martial soul force immediately attacked his soul. He Dao's face changed, and he staggered backwards. The piercing pain from his soul made his expression change rapidly. Afterwards, he gritted his teeth and made up his mind. In the next moment, his face instantly turned pale, and his body became blurry in the void. It looked like he was about to disappear. This was a secret technique that He Dao had grasped to escape. Once he used the secret technique, he would enter a half-fused state with space, making it very difficult to injure him. He was basically undying. He only needed to charge up the secret technique, and he could directly cross an extremely great distance to flee. Even Grand Primes who were 1 or 2 cultivation levels higher than him would not be able to catch up to him. Clearly, He Dao had already seen through the current situation. He knew that he would not be able to last more than a few rounds against the martial soul lineage, so he fled decisively. If the Four Symbols Alliance is destroyed, Old Man will leave the Cloud Plain. If the Old Man leaves and the Four Symbols Alliance regains power, all Old Man has to do is return, thought He Dao. You want to flee so soon? However, Escaping from our martial soul lineage won't be easy, said Chu Jian with a sneer. A sliver of disdain appeared on Chu Jian's face. His eyes immediately became extremely deep as powerful martial soul force shot out from his forehead like a sharp sword. It ignored all defenses and stabbed into He Dao's forehead with indescribable speed. Even when He Dao learned that Chu Jian was using a secret technique, there was nothing he could do. He could only watch as the secret technique approached him. He could not find any way to stop it, let alone dodge. Immediately, an intense pain came from He Dao's forehead, causing him to uncontrollably grunt in pain. His vision immediately blurred. How is this possible? My body has already fused with space. I'm basically undying, yet I still can't stop martial soul force? What is this martial soul force? Why is it so powerful? He Dao was extremely shocked. Due to the interference, the secret technique that he had been charging up for his life was forcefully interrupted. At the same time, Chu Jian's sword suddenly stabbed into He Dao's forehead. He Dao was dead. Now, the 3 peak experts who had betrayed the righteous alliance had all died. This is far too terrifying. Zhou Zhidao personally witnessed the entire process of He Dao's death. He was shocked as well. He had fought He Dao for a very long time, so he understood He Dao's strength extremely well. Even he would only be able to tie with He Dao at most. Yet He Dao had been slain so quickly by the martial soul lineage. This had quite the impact on him. Did that not mean that he would not be able to last more than a few rounds against the martial soul lineage like He Dao? Far too terrifying. This is far too terrifying. Fortunately, the martial soul lineage is naturally restricted, preventing them from becoming grand primes. Otherwise, who would be able to stop them in the vast saint's world? Zhou Zhidao was very unsettled. He secretly swore that he would never become enemies with the martial soul lineage, no matter what. The Tianyuan family in the southern region of the Cloud Plain. The Dong and province had been completely flattened. The towering city walls had vanished long ago. The entire city had changed beyond recognition. Only the Tianyuan family remained standing under the protection of the second formation. A ball of blood-red light pulsed violently in the air above the ruins of the Dong and province. This was the cage that Lin Fei had cast through a secret technique, trapping Su Ran in a sealed space. Without Su Ran, the Tianyuan family no longer had any peak strength. As a result, the young Star Lord's people no longer had anything to fear. They all unleashed their full strength to get through the formation. Even Lin Fei, who was protecting the young Star Lord, took part. Under the attacks of so many experts, the Tianyuan family's protective formation shook violently. Its light rapidly dimmed as tiny cracks appeared from time to time. Clearly, the formation had reached its limit. Boom! At this moment, Lin Fei's powerful strike struck the barrier heavily. The terrifying strike from a 6th heavenly layer chaotic prime finally destroyed the final point of support of the formation. All the formation cores exploded with a boom. The final protective formation of the Tianyuan family had finally been ripped apart. Without the protection of the formation, all the people of the Tianyuan family were directly exposed to the violent streams of energy. The powerful energy shockwaves wreaking havoc in the sky were like a flash flood, bringing with it a terrifying power that could destroy everything as it poured down from the sky. Chapter 2708. The storm of energy came from Lin Fei, who was a 6th heavenly layer chaotic prime. Even Divine King experts were unable to withstand such terrifying ripples of energy, let alone the fact that less than 100th of the Divine King experts in the Tianyuan family. Facing this terrifying storm that could even kill godly kings, those martial artists whose cultivation had yet to reach the godly king realm could only face death. Am I, the great newbies, going to die here today? The golden-robed newbies stood on a roof in the Tianyuan family as he stared at the storm of energy in the sky. His face was filled with reluctance. He had already reached the peak of the Divine King. In particular, after obtaining the old snake's corpse, his cultivation had rapidly advanced towards the primordial realm by devouring the essence of his clansmen. Before long, he would break through to the divine king realm and truly reach the primordial realm. Even the power of his bloodline would evolve as he devoured the old snake. He firmly believed that he would definitely shine brilliantly in the future and become an expert who reigned supreme. I, the great newbies, have only just begun. I haven't reached the end of my path of evolution. A smear of madness appeared in Newbies' eyes. There was also great reluctance. He was unwilling to die like this. He was unwilling to die before he had reached the peak. He was unwilling to become someone else's stepping stone. Aren't you just a chaotic prime? So what if you're a chaotic prime? I, the great Newbies, am not afraid of you. A smear of madness appeared in Newbies' eyes. He did not wait for death in despair before the disaster that was about to befall him. Instead, he ignited the battle intent hidden in his blood. He would rather die than submit. Even though he knew he was going to die, he would not just sit there and wait for death. Instead, he chose to burn all of his potential and erupt with all of his power. He would use his final, feeble flames of life to erupt with the most resplendent light and die a glorious death in battle. When Newbies unleashed his fearlessness and was prepared to sacrifice everything for the final battle, it seemed to ignite the potential hidden in the depths of his bloodline. It actually caused the special blood of golden-striped silver snakes to change slightly. The change was very minute and very profound. Even Newbies failed to sense it. However, the change made Newbies' bloodline advance slightly, making it slightly greater than before. Or it could be said that his bloodline had evolved slightly at this moment. The terrifying storm of energy in the sky surged over as if it could destroy everything. The tremendous pressure forced Newbies to revert to his original form uncontrollably. It was a small golden snake that was 10,000 jang long. The reason why it was called a small snake was because it was extremely small. Its body was 10,000 jang long, but it was only as thick as a water jar. It was completely disproportionate to its body length. From afar, he seemed like a long, golden rope that hovered in the air. On the back of the small golden snake, there were 2 long lines, one gold and one silver, extending out. They ran through the entire body. The long golden line had already become dim, and it was not obvious at all. It was as if it had completely merged with the golden snake scales that covered the entire body. Only the silver line shone with extremely bright light. This was the symbol of golden-striped silver snakes. A small horn had grown out of Newbies' head. It was wrapped in profound patterns, and it flickered with blue light. Golden-striped silver snakes did not have horns. Newbies' transformation had clearly deviated from the original form of a golden-striped silver snake. Suddenly, Newbies, who had reverted to his original form, let out a roar. His long body suddenly coiled up, forming a shield of flesh above the Tianyuan family. His head soared into the sky like a sharp sword, fearlessly rushing towards the devastating energy waves. However, the difference between the two was just too great. Even though Newbies was already at the peak of the divine king realm, and even though his bloodline had evolved slightly, he was still unable to make up for the huge gap between them. Under the bombardment of the violent energy waves, Newbies' head was first. His extremely tough head was instantly covered in cracks, and golden liquid flowed out. Next was his body. All the golden scales had shattered, and his huge body was covered in countless wounds. Golden liquid covered his entire body. Newbies produced a painful roar. He used his body as a shield above the Tianyuan family, bearing the brunt of the terrifying energy waves. He immediately became heavily injured, and his long body was about to be ripped apart under the destruction of the energy. Just when Newbies felt like he was about to be ripped to pieces, a series of hurried notes suddenly rang out. Shangguan Mu sat in the air as she placed the 36-string zither of the demonic cry across her knees. Her slender fingers rapidly plucked the strings, forming visible sound waves. Her fingers, which were as white and tender as mutton fat, were already broken. Blood dyed the strings red and dripped onto the guqin, drop by drop. Clearly, Shangguan Mu had used her full strength. However, even with her and newbies, they were still unable to stop the energy waves from a chaotic prime. Even with the third ancestor's legacy and the two tunes of the demonic and divine, it was useless. Spurt. Blood sprayed from Shangguan Mu'er's mouth as she fell to the ground like a broken kite. Her face was pale. However, at this moment, a gentle energy silently appeared around Shangguan Mu'er, protecting her. A smear of shock and doubt appeared in Shangguan Mu'er's eyes when she sensed the existence of the energy. She could clearly sense just how terrifying the energy was. Even though it was only a thin layer, it gave Shangguan Mu a feeling that it was indestructible. It was as if even the destruction of the world and the collapse of space would not be able to get through this thin layer of energy. Shangguan Mu suddenly looked towards the depths of the Tianyuan family. She could vaguely sense that the energy came from the depths of the Tianyuan family. To her pity, the energy only protected her. Newbies and everyone else in the Tianyuan family remained in the destructive storm. It was as if she was the only person in the entire Tianyuan family who was valued by the mysterious expert. Shangguan Mu opened her mouth. Just when she wanted to ask the mysterious expert to save the Tianyuan family, a huge bronze shield suddenly flew over from outer space. It crossed through space with unbelievable speed and appeared above the Tianyuan family in a single instance. An azure screen of light enveloped the Tianyuan family. When the powerful streams of energy collided with the azure screen of light, the screen immediately rippled and successfully blocked them. Yun Ziding and Su Qi rapidly descended from the sky. They radiated with the powerful presence of chaotic primes as they shot through the sky like meteors, falling towards the Tianyuan family. Behind them were Bai Rafeng Aoyama and Jianqin. They all hurried towards the Tianyuan family at different speeds. Oh no, it's the people of the martial soul lineage. They've actually returned. Lin Fei's face immediately changed as he experienced an ill omen. Oh no, the people of the martial soul lineage have actually returned. The seniors from the desolate plain actually failed to kill them. We're in trouble now. Will the Tianyuan family still be destroyed? Should we retreat first? The hearts of the two other chaotic primes from the young star Lord Side sank as well. They became extremely stern. However, before they could come to a conclusion, Yun Ziding and Su Qi had already arrived in front of them. Yun Ziding held a bronze spear in his hand, and his aura was monstrous. He directly pierced through the void and stabbed towards Lin Fei. Chapter 2709. Even though Lin Fei was a sixth heavenly layer chaotic prime, he did not dare to be careless against Yun Ziding, who was a fifth heavenly layer chaotic prime. Instead, he was stern. A huge, two-handed sword suddenly appeared in his hand. As the energy within him erupted, the sword immediately shone brightly. It emitted scorching, snow-white sword chi as the supreme pressure of a sixth heavenly layer chaotic prime permeated the surroundings, causing the clouds to churn. Lin Fei used his full strength right from the start. However, just when he was about to swing out with his sword, a thunderous boom suddenly rang out in his head. His soul had silently been struck by a mysterious power, causing him to experience tearing pain as if his entire soul was about to shatter. Even his vision had turned dark. The pain from his soul was enough to make him faint, causing Lin Fei to lose all sense of the outside world. Spurt. It was also at this moment that Yun Ziding's spear pierced Lin Fei's protective energy. It continued onwards without slowing down all, piercing through Lin Fei's head in the end. Lin Fei, who was a sixth heavenly layer chaotic prime, had been wiped out in a single clash. Yun Ziding completely crushed Lin Fei in a manner that instantly killed him. How is this possible? Lin Fei is actually dead. Above the Tianyuan family, The two other fifth heavenly layer chaotic primes stared at Lin Fei blankly. Disbelief filled their faces. From the moment Yun Ziding appeared in front of Lin Fei to the moment Lin Fei died, everything had happened in an instant. Lin Fei, whose cultivation was one celestial layer higher than theirs, was actually so weak in front of Yun Ziding, which was hard for them to accept. Even though they were mentally prepared and understood that the battle prowess of the martial soul lineage was great and that martial soul force was strange and unfathomable, they had never thought it would be so terrifying. For a time, the two supreme elders' hearts were filled with shock. They stared blankly at Lin Fei, who had already been destroyed in both body and soul, forgetting to run. At that moment, Su Qi arrived. She charged straight at a Grand Elder of the Four Symbols Alliance. Su Qi's cultivation was slightly weaker than Yun Ziding's. She was a third heavenly layer chaotic prime, but she showed no fear at all when facing an opponent 2 levels higher than her. Immediately, there was a deafening roar. Su Qi was already engaged in a fierce battle with one of them. However, due to the difference in strength of 2 small realms, Su Qi's battle was obviously longer than Yun Ziding's. Run, run. Only now did the other 5th heavenly layer chaotic prime, Great Elder, finally return to his senses. He had lost all of his will to fight. His entire body trembled slightly as he turned around and fled in fear. Yun Ziding's figure suddenly appeared in front of him. His eyes were cold as if he was looking at a dead man. Without much nonsense, the bronze spear in his hand pierced out mercilessly. The 3 chaotic primes with the young star lord were not Yun Ziding and Su Qi's opponents at all. They were all slain very soon. The 3 chaotic primes were like Poseidon to the group. Their deaths had shaken their morale. The expressions of the infinite prime elders who had attacked the Tianyuan family all changed drastically. The deaths of the 3 chaotic primes were like a bolt out of the blue to them. They immediately stopped caring about the Tianyuan family and fled in all directions in fear. Afterwards, the cultivators below Divine King and Divine King had no idea what had happened, but they all sensed that something was wrong when they saw the elders flee in panic. They turned around and fled without any hesitation. Immediately, all the cultivators who had gathered around the Tianyuan family and were about to massacre the Tianyuan family vanished. They fled in all directions. Although over half of them were at the Divine King realm, they were filled with doubt and confusion as they fled. They had no idea what had happened to frighten the powerful elders to such a degree. However, although they had doubts in their hearts, their speed was not slow. The panic that appeared on the faces of those elders affected many of the cultivators below, causing almost all of them to use all of their strength to escape at full speed. How can this be? How can this be? A gray-robed old man hovered above the ruins of the Dong'an province. He did not flee in panic like the other primordial realm experts. Instead, he hovered there dejectedly as he was lost. The old man gave off the presence of an infinite prime. He was the ancestor of the Heavenly Moon Empire. The Heavenly Moon Empire had 2 ancestors. One of them had been personally slain by Su Ran, so he was the only one left alive. It's over. It's over. The Heavenly Moon Empire is done for. The black-robed old man became extremely dispirited. His eyes were filled with deathly stillness and despair, as well as deep regret. If our Heavenly Moon Empire obeyed the orders of the Tianyuan family obediently, we would definitely have a glorious future. In the end, the 2 of us personally destroyed it. I hate. The gray-robed old man said sorrowfully. Ancestor, let's go. We can't stay here. The Divine Kings of the Heavenly Moon Empire returned. They arrived beside the gray-robed old man in an attempt to drag him away. The gray-robed old man only waved his hand gently, and the Divine Kings were pushed away by a gentle force. Go. Don't return to the Heavenly Moon Empire after leaving here. That way, you might be able to keep one of you alive. The gray-robed old man gazed into the distance. He stared at Yun Ziding and Su Qi, who were saving Su ran. His eyes were gloomy. Now that things had developed like this, he knew he was doomed. Even the young Star Lord would not be able to save him, regardless of whether the young Star Lord took a puny infinite prime seriously or not. Even if the young Star Lord was willing to save him, the young Star Lord would not be able to do so with his current strength. This was because the martial soul lineage would not show any respect to the young Star Lord. At the same time, a powerful killing intent descended from the sky. Jianqin by Rafeng and Aoime descended as well. Before they had even approached the ground, Jianqin discovered the situation of the provincial city with a single glance. At the same time, he saw the Tianyuan family who had their final formation destroyed, as well as newbies who had reverted to his original form and was covered in golden blood. Jianqin's eyes immediately reddened, and his chilling killing intent caused the surrounding temperature to plummet. Kill! At the same time, a deafening battle cry rang out. A large number of cultivators charged out from the Tianyuan family. They all radiated with powerful killing intent as they pursued the cultivators of the Four Symbols Alliance and the Heavenly Moon Empire with hatred and fury. Chapter 2710. The young Star Lord was the only person present who did not flee. The reason why he did not flee was not because he was the foster son of the 9 brilliant Star Lord and possessed great status, so he was confident that no one would harm him. Instead, he had been stunned by the sudden turn of events. For a moment, all he could do was hover there blankly as he stared at the corpses of the 3 chaotic primes he had brought fall from the sky. He was unable to return to his senses, even after quite some time. It wasn't because his mental endurance wasn't strong enough, but because all these changes happened too quickly. All the formations of the Tianyuan family had been breached. Destroying the Tianyuan family would only take a few seconds. The young Star Lord was already confident of victory. He had even prepared himself to see the destruction of the Tianyuan family and to think of a way to capture Shangguan-Mu alive. As a matter of fact, he was even thinking about how he could trample on Shangguan-Mu, in the future. However, he had never thought that in the blink of an eye, the 3 chaotic primes he had brought with him would all die. All the cultivators who had attacked the Tianyuan family fled in all directions. The Tianyuan family that should have been destroyed actually managed to turn the situation around with an overwhelming advantage. In a single moment, he, who should have been the center of attention, had become all alone. The series of events happened in an extremely short amount of time. It was like falling from heaven to hell. The young Star Lord was greatly affected. How did this happen? The young Star Lord murmured to himself. At that moment, he felt like he was dreaming, as if everything before him was not real. Instead, it was an illusion. However, he soon noticed Jianqin descend from the sky and vanish from the Tianyuan family. As a result, his slightly dazed gaze became rather determined again. As a matter of fact, a sliver of excitement and eagerness flashed through his eyes. Jianqin, you finally appeared. You finally appeared before me. Although the people I brought with me have returned in defeat, victory and defeat are no longer important as long as you've appeared, murmured the young Star Lord. The moment he saw Jianqin, he suddenly became rather excited. At the same time, he carefully hid the life plume that the Heavenly King of Azure Brilliance had given him. Mu, are you all right? In the Tianyuan family, Jianqin arrived before Shangguan-Mu, as soon as possible. Looking at the pale-faced Shangguan-Mu, with blood on the corner of her mouth, he immediately felt a piercing pain in his heart. He also felt a sense of guilt. He had brought Shangguan-Mu back from the Taoist sect of Divine Sound because he wanted to give Shangguan-Mu a peaceful and relaxing cultivation environment that far surpassed the Taoist sect of Divine Sound. However, he had never thought that this incident would almost cause Shangguan-Mu to be doomed. Jianqin, I'm fine. I'm only slightly injured. Go check on newbies. His wounds are even worse than mine, said Shangguan-Mu, as she smiled in relief. When Jianqin fought in outer space, Shangguan-Mu, I had no idea whether the martial soul lineage could fend off experts like Su Jiping and Huang Fugi. As a result, she had been extremely worried for Jianqin's safety. Only now that Jianqin had appeared before her unscathed, she finally stopped worrying. Jianqin carefully checked Shangguanmu, Er's wounds. Only after discovering that they were not particularly severe did he feel slightly better. Afterwards, he personally fed her a god-tier healing pill before immediately arriving before newbies. Jianqin's face immediately became extremely sunken with a single glance. Newbies' wounds were even worse than he had imagined. He was basically on the brink of death. Jianqin fed Newbies the best healing pill he had on him. He stood beside Newbies and slowly scanned the surroundings. In particular, when he saw the flattened provincial city of the Dong and province outside the Tianyuan family, killing intent immediately erupted like a volcano that had been suppressed for a very long time. Young Star Lord. Jianqin stressed every single word through gritted teeth. At that moment, his killing intent towards the young star Lord had reached its limit. I've come to beg for forgiveness. At this moment, the only remaining ancestral emperor of the Heavenly Moon Empire arrived in the Tianyuan family. His old eyes were filled with the intent to die. He looked at Jianqin rather spiritlessly before lowering his head before everyone in the Tianyuan family. He abandoned his dignity as a primordial realm expert and slowly knelt down on his knees. Not only was he kneeling down for his dignity, but he was also kneeling down for the dignity of the Heavenly Moon Empire. This was because he was the ancestral emperor of the Heavenly Moon Empire. He was the only remaining ancestor of the Heavenly Moon Empire. Although a large number of cultivators had already left the Tianyuan family to hunt down the people who had fled, there were still a few people who remained behind. At this moment, all the senior members, guards, and servants of the Tianyuan family stared at the old man who knelt before Jianqin in shock. They all fell silent. To all the proud people, making them kneel was even more difficult than killing them, let alone the fact that the person kneeling was the ancestral emperor of the Heavenly Moon Empire who they could only look up to before the Tianyuan family had been founded. He was someone who could decide their fate with a single word. At this moment, the ancestral emperor of an ancient empire that they had never dared to associate with was kneeling before them. This left all the senior members and guards of the Tianyuan family extremely shocked. As the patriarch of the Mo clan in the past, the current emperor of the Pingtian Empire, Mo Xingfeng, stared at the ancestral emperor with mixed feelings. Several decades ago, Mo Xingfeng was only the patriarch of a tiny Mo clan. The strongest ancestor of the Mo clan was only a god. However, the Heavenly Moon Empire was definitely the supreme ruler of the land to them. They ruled over a vast region, and the primordial realm ancestor of the Heavenly Moon Empire was an unimaginable existence. In less than a century, the ancestral emperor of the Heavenly Moon Empire that Mo Xingfeng found unreachable in the past had knelt before him. This left him amazed, and he struggled to calm down even after a very long time. Patriarch, I already know my crimes. Everything is my fault. I am willing to become a slave and servant to make up for my mistakes. I only hope that you can spare the Heavenly Moon Empire's crimes this time, the ancestral emperor of the Heavenly Moon Empire said meekly. Do you think that becoming a slave can make up for your betrayal of the Heavenly Moon Empire? Jianqin was unfazed. He stared at the ancestor of the Heavenly Moon Empire coldly as killing intent filled his eyes. If the patriarch looks down on my measly strength, I'm willing to die as an apology. I only hope that the patriarch can be magnanimous and give our Heavenly Moon Empire a chance to atone for our sins, the ancestor continued. The great ancestor of the Heavenly Moon Dynasty continued. He was already unafraid of death. What he was most worried about was the legacy of the Heavenly Moon Dynasty. He was not someone who feared death. Whether it was the betrayal of the Heavenly Moon Empire before, or the kneeling right now, it was all for the sake of the Heavenly Moon Empire's legacy. Chapter 27:11. Jianqin's face did not change at all. He said coldly, Everything that has happened recently has made me hate traitors even more. As long as it's a traitor, there's only one outcome, and that's death." With that, Jianqin formed a sword with his finger, and a sharp sword qi immediately shot out. Afterwards, it suddenly stabbed towards the ancestor's forehead. The sharp sword qi mercilessly pierced into the Heavenly Moon Dynasty's ancestor's head. From the beginning to the end, the ancestor of the Heavenly Moon Empire did not put up any resistance, as he knew that all resistance would be pointless. Not only would he die, but he might even anger Jianqin further and drag down the Heavenly Moon Empire. Before he died, he only hoped that he could move Jianqin with his sincerity so that Jianqin would spare the Heavenly Moon Empire, even if only a sliver of the imperial bloodline remained. Of course, he did not receive any promises from Jianqin. From then on, there was no longer a single primordial realm expert in the Heavenly Moon Empire. Suddenly, a rumble rang out in the sky. The formation that trapped Su Ran had shattered. Her aged body was exposed in the violent streams of energy. As soon as she broke free, Su Ran looked at the Tianyuan family worriedly. When she saw that the Tianyuan family was not too damaged, she immediately let out a sigh of relief. "I don't have to worry now that you've come," Su Ran said to Su Ting and Su Xiling. Su Ran said to Yun Ziding and Su Qi before looking into the distance. With her vision, she could clearly see Qing Shan and Bai Rufeng hunting down the fleeing primordial realm experts. Since the martial soul lineage had appeared, it was impossible for her to not understand that they had gained the upper hand in the battle in outer space. "I'll leave the matters of the Tianyuan family to you. We'll go to the other battlefields to provide support," Yun Xiling said to Su Ran. Afterwards, with a wave of his hand, the bronze shield above the Tianyuan family immediately turned into a streak of light and landed in his hand. Previously, at the critical moment, it was Yun Ziding who stepped in and helped the Tianyuan family withstand a disaster. "Hee. 8th junior brother needs a lot of corpses. Let's go collect some for him." Su Qi giggled, then left after informing Jianqin. In terms of cultivation, Su Ran was the person with the highest cultivation here. He was even slightly stronger than Yun Ziding. He was already at the peak of the 5th heavenly layer. In terms of battle prowess, Su Ran was also extremely powerful. It was difficult for him to find an opponent in the same cultivation level, and he could challenge those of a higher cultivation level. However, in terms of killing speed, Su Ran was nowhere close to the martial soul lineage. Yun Ziding and Su Qi left the southern region of Cloud Continent and went to the eastern, northern, and middle regions where the fighting was more intense. Su Ran continued to oversee the Tianyuan family. In the Tianyuan family, Jianqin once again fed newbies a divine elixir. Then he took a step forward and instantly disappeared from the Tianyuan family. When he appeared again, he had already arrived before the young Star Lord. Jianqin's face sank as he looked at the fearless young Star Lord. His gaze was extremely sharp, and the surging killing intent in his eyes seemed to invade the young Star Lord's flesh, freezing his blood and destroying his soul. At that moment, Jianqin seemed so terrifying. What a terrifying gaze! The young Star Lord's heart could not help but tremble. He felt his entire body turn cold, as if countless swords had pierced through his skin. This was not because he was afraid. Instead, it was because all the people who were weaker than Jianqin would react to Jianqin's terrifying killing intent. This was a form of suppression from the strong toward the weak. Although the young Star Lord had seen countless experts in his 1,000 years of life, this was the first time he had felt such intense killing intent. This was because all the experts he had seen in the past treated him politely, fearing that they would slight him at all. None of them dared to show killing intent towards him like Jianqin did. "Ha ha ha ha, Jianqin, you seem to be extremely furious. You're extremely furious. Although I failed to destroy your Tianyuan family personally, it's not a wasted trip after seeing you like this, even if I failed to destroy the Tianyuan family. At the very least, I know that the effort I wasted on your Tianyuan family has paid off. The young Star Lord forcefully endured Jianshan's surging, killing intent as he teased. Do you really think I can't do anything to you just because you have a powerful father? I don't care whose son you are, I'll still kill you today. You're looking to die, Jianshan said coldly. With that, strands of sharp sword qi immediately condensed around him. Clearly, he truly wanted to kill. Su Ran arrived beside Jianshan as well. She stared at the young Star Lord for a while before looking at Jianshan again. She could tell with a single glance that Jianshan was truly about to kill the young Star Lord. He had not considered the 9 brilliant Star Lord's existence at all. This made Su Ran hesitate. Even though she was very furious, she did not let her anger get to her head. She knew extremely well that killing the young Star Lord would completely offend the 9 brilliant Star Lord. This was because the young Star Lord was the 9 brilliant Star Lord's only son. Even though he was only a foster son, he was still the person closest to the 9 brilliant Star Lord. However, after hesitating for a while, Su Ran still decided to let Jianshan do as he pleased. She did not stop him. This was because she was one of the few people in the Saints' world who knew that the Anata Grand Exalt was still alive. As long as the Grandmaster is here, the 9 brilliant Star Lord won't be able to do anything, thought Su Ran. The young Star Lord felt like he had heard the funniest joke in the world from Jianshan's words. He could not help but laugh aloud. You want to kill me? Jianshan, you probably don't have the ability. The person who will die today will be you, not me. With that, the young Star Lord immediately flipped his hand, and an azure feather silently appeared on his empty hand. He immediately activated the power hidden within the feather as quickly as he could, without any hesitation at all. Immediately, an extremely terrifying pulse of energy erupted from the feather even to Jianshan and Su Ran. The terrifying pressure crushed down on Jianshan like an invisible mountain, immediately making Jianshan feel heavy. Breathing became difficult, and his movements became extremely sluggish. Be careful! Su Ran's face changed drastically, and she immediately cried out. She lacked the courage to resist the terrifying pulse of energy at all. She wanted to flee with Jianshan. However, it was already too late. Even though Su Ran was very fast, the azure feather was even faster. It shone with dazzling azure light as if it could ignore the distance between them. It shot towards Jianshan at a terrifying speed that surpassed everything else. Immediately, the cyan light shone resplendently, illuminating the world. This cyan feather seemed to become the only thing in the world. In front of it, space froze, time froze, and everything fell into a stillness. Only this feather could advance in the stillness. This was a strange sight due to the extreme speed. A great sense of danger filled Jianshan's entire soul. His eyes immediately narrowed to the size of needles, but he was unable to do anything as he faced the azure light from the feather. All he could do was watch as the azure light from the feather rapidly expanded in his eyes. Chapter 27:12. Jianshan was extremely shocked. He had no idea how many years it had been since he felt such great danger. Even though he had faced life-threatening dangers in the past, he could basically see a sliver of hope for survival or resistance. At the very least, he would have some time to think. However, not only did the danger this time come suddenly, but it was also indescribably fast. He truly did not have the time to react at all. He could not even move a finger. This was because the speed with which the azure feather shot over had exceeded everything. Even if Jianshan had some life-saving trump cards, he would not have the time to use them before such speed. Clearly, the heavenly king of azure brilliance had suffered in Jianshan's Anata Tower, which had taught him a lesson. He wanted to use the young Star Lord to get rid of Jianshan this time, because he was worried that Jianshan possessed some sort of trump card that he did not know about. As a result, he planned on using his life-bound feather to erupt with extreme speed so that he could kill Jianshan with a speed that surpassed the reactions of many primordial realm experts. This king's life-bound feather has been activated. At the same time, the heavenly king of azure brilliance sat on a desolate meteor in a sea of stars extremely distant from the cloud plain. He allowed the meteor to carry him to an unknown location. Suddenly, the heavenly king of azure brilliance sensed something. He stood up immediately, and his jade eyes shone brightly as he stared in the direction of the cloud plain. When the rain abyss and the blue sky venerable fought before, the heavenly king of azure brilliance had retreated without any hesitation despite being extremely distant from the cloud plain. He had retreated to an even more distant place and waited silently. As a result, he was unable to see the cloud plain from where he was right now. However, his excited and eager eyes seemed to be able to see through space. In the moment his life-bound feather was activated, Genshin's figure was actually reflected in his eyes. After his life-bound feather was activated, it basically turned into a pair of glasses at the same time, allowing him to see the surroundings. Genshin. Ever since ancient times, anyone who has offended this king will suffer a horrible fate. You are obviously no different. The person who killed you this time is the foster son of the 9 Brilliant Star Lord. It has nothing to do with me. The heavenly king of azure brilliance sneered. He had many reasons to distance himself from Genshin's death, so that he could remain uninvolved. He wanted the young Star Lord and the 9 Brilliant Star Lord to bear all the responsibility and consequences. This was because he had only given the young Star Lord a life-saving treasure out of respect for the 9 Brilliant Star Lord. As for what the young Star Lord wanted to do with the life-saving treasure, it had nothing to do with him. I've let you escape time and time again. Let's see how you'll survive this time. And the Inata Grand Exalt. Genshin's death has nothing to do with me. I didn't kill him. The heavenly king of azure brilliance's sneer deepened. Using someone else to do the dirty work was just too perfect. However, the heavenly king of azure brilliance's smile froze very soon. His entire body stiffened. A small hand pierced through space outside the Tianyuan family in the southern region of the Cloud Plain, extending out in an extremely sudden manner. The hand was extremely white and tender, like that of a newborn. From the size of the hand, the owner of the hand was definitely a young child. However, the power of the ways had condensed on the tiny hand, forming a resonance with the world. Every single action of the hand could affect the power of the ways of the world. Afterwards, he reached out gently at an unhurried speed. With this grab, the space between heaven and earth suddenly shrunk. It felt as if the casual grab of this pair of small hands had already imprisoned this part of the void. The feather that was rapidly flying through the void was naturally unable to avoid it. In the end, the hand grabbed the life-bound feather bestowed by the heavenly king of azure brilliance. The greatest trump card the young star Lord had used to kill Genshin. No, it could not even be described as easy. Instead, it was casual. Indeed, the pair of small hands had sealed an area of space with just a casual grab, easily trapping the astonishingly fast azure feather in her hands. Afterwards, a red-robed boy appeared before Genshin silently. He was not tall, only reaching the height of Genshin's chest. Right now, he had his back towards Genshin as he stared at the azure feather in his hand with interest. At the same time, the heavenly king of azure brilliance stood on a meteor with a pale face in a distant region of space. The red-clothed boy's face appeared in his eyes. When the boy looked at the heavenly king of azure brilliance's life-bound plume feather, their gazes seemed to collide with each other from a distant region of space. The heartless child, the heavenly king of azure brilliance, gnashed his teeth. His face, which had been filled with excitement and joy earlier, immediately became extremely ugly. There was deep fear as well. There were very few people in the saints' world that even the heavenly king of azure brilliance dared not provoke. Apart from the 9th heavenly layer grand primes, there were only a few extremely terrifying existences. The heartless child was one of them. Heavenly king of azure brilliance, You're still a little too inexperienced to kill before me." The heartless child smiled mockingly as well as a faint sense of mockery. Afterwards, he clenched his hand gently. With a gentle explosion, the heavenly king of azure brilliance's life-bound feather exploded in the heartless child's hand. The terrifying energy within the feather immediately leaked out. Immediately, a dazzling light shone through the gaps between the heartless child's fingers. It was extremely dazzling. However, the terrifying energy that could blow up space was trapped in the heartless child's hand. Not a single ripple of energy managed to escape from the heartless child's hand. Sue Ran, who was standing to one side, witnessed this with her own eyes. Her pupils also narrowed as shock filled her face. The strength that the heartless child had displayed shocked even Sue Ran. "Senior, it's you?" Jianqin stared at the heartless child's back. The tiny figure had left him with a deep impression. However, he soon discovered the terrifying energy trapped in the heartless child's hand, and he could not help but become shocked. When he first saw the child when he visited a branch of the Myriad Bone Guild, he had thought he was just an ordinary member. Afterwards, when he destroyed the Gloomwater sect, the heartless child had secretly killed a 9th heavenly layer chaotic prime of the Gloomwater sect. This was the first time Jianqin had witnessed the heartless child's strength. Yet now the heartless child was actually able to trap such terrifying energy in his hand, preventing it from leaking out at all. Jianqin's heart churned when he saw this. He was unable to remain calm. Originally, he thought the heartless child was just an ordinary Grand Prime in the Gloomwater sect. But now that he had seen it, this was no longer the strength of an ordinary Grand Prime. He had never thought that the child he had seen in the various branches of the Myriad Bone Guild would actually be such a terrifying expert. Chapter 27:13. In the blink of an eye, the threat of the life plume from the heavenly king of azure brilliance was easily nullified by the heartless child. The young Star Lord saw all of this clearly, and his face suddenly froze. The heartless child had nullified the heavenly king of azure brilliance's attack so easily, which also shocked the young Star Lord. He even felt disbelief. "Who are you? Why are you getting in my way? Do you know who my foster father is?" The young Star Lord stared at the heartless child in fear as he subconsciously took a step back. The heartless child did not give off any pulses of energy at all. He seemed like an ordinary child from next door. But the young Star Lord felt fear instinctively. "Isn't your foster father the 9 Brilliance Star, Lord of the Star Brilliance Plane? Others fear the 9 Brilliance Star Lord, but I don't." "Your foster father naturally knows who I am," said the heartless child very indifferently. He did not take the young Star Lord seriously at all. The identity that the young Star Lord took pride in was worthless in the eyes of the heartless child. "Why? You're actually not even afraid of my foster father." The young Star Lord's face changed. In the past 1,000 years, no matter where he went, no matter how powerful the experts he came across, as long as he mentioned his foster father's name, they would be stunned. This young boy in front of him was the only one who was not afraid of his adoptive father out of all the experts he had met. As a result, he could vaguely sense that the child was probably at the same level as his foster father. Even if he was not as powerful as his foster father, he was not too far off. "Jianqin, you deal with the matters here first. I'll be back in a few days, and I have an important piece of news for you then." With that, the heartless child suddenly vanished. With the heartless child's departure, Jianqin immediately looked at the young Star Lord. His cold gaze and terrifying killing intent made the young Star Lord shiver. "Jianqin, consider yourself lucky this time," the young star thought to himself. The young Star Lord grumbled inside. Now that he had lost all of his trump cards, he lacked confidence in facing Jianqin. After saying that with great reluctance, he turned around and left. "Do you think you can leave before me?" Jianqin appeared before the young Star Lord, silently blocking his path. The 9 stars, sort of heavenly ways, slowly appeared in his hand. As he channeled energy into it, illusionary stars immediately appeared. A terrifying pressure permeated the surroundings, kicking up dust and pebbles. With your strength, only the Divine King, you'll be worthy of your status if you die to my 9-star sword of heavenly ways, Jianchen said slowly. Sharp sword chi locked onto the young Star Lord firmly. You want to kill me? The young Star Lord's face changed drastically when he heard that. At that moment, he was finally unable to maintain his composure anymore. He began to panic. An emotion that he had never experienced before silently filled his heart, filling his entire being very soon. He could not help but tremble gently. This was the fear of death. My foster father is the 9-brilliant Star Lord. If you touch a hair on me, my foster father will never spare you. Even the heavenly palace of Bishing can't endure my foster father's wrath, the young star said sternly. His eyes gradually narrowed. In particular, when he saw Jianchen slowly raise the 9-star sword of heavenly ways in his hand, his heart trembled even more. Even his legs trembled. Foster father, save me. In the end, the young Star Lord was frightened out of his wits by Jianchen's killing intent. All the defenses in his heart collapsed, and he fled in panic with a pale face. It was also at this moment that Jianchen stabbed out with the 9-star sword of heavenly ways in his hand. The sword seemed to fuse with space, and the tip of the sword vanished. Afterwards, it suddenly reappeared before the young Star Lord in an extremely strange fashion. The young Star Lord, who fled in a panic, directly collided with the sharp tip of the 9-star sword of heavenly ways. Spurt! The sharp tip of the sword pierced the young Star Lord's chest mercilessly. Terrifying sword chi immediately swept through the young Star Lord's body, cutting through his organs and meridians. Even his soul failed to escape. The young Star Lord's eyes widened as disbelief filled his face. Even when he died, he refused to believe that someone would actually kill him. The foster son of the 9-brilliant Star Lord, Tianyao, had died. In outer space, Hanzong, Chu Jian, and Yu Chao, who had gained the upper hand against the Four Symbols Alliance, discovered the young Star Lord's death as well. They immediately became stern. End the battle quickly, Hanzong called out. Afterwards, Yu Chao and Chu Jian immediately struck out as hard as they could. The young Star Lord is actually dead. The expressions of the peak experts of the Four Symbols Alliance were extremely ugly as well. The young Star Lord was their greatest source of confidence, as he was the link that connected them to the 9-brilliant Star Lord. Now that this link had been severed, all their efforts had been for nothing. Not only that, but they might even face the wrath of the 9-brilliant Star Lord. This was because the young Star Lord had died on the Cloud Plain. All the peak experts on the Cloud Plain could not shirk their responsibility. The Righteous Alliance had close ties with the Tianyuan family. Perhaps they could receive the heavenly palace of Bishing's protection. But their Four Symbols Alliance did not have such a powerful backing. For a moment, the hearts of the peak experts of the Four Symbols Alliance plummeted. Bang! Jianchen tossed the young Star Lord's corpse to the ground in the Tianyuan family. Only with the young Star Lord's death did the killing intent in his heart finally disperse slowly. The people of the Tianyuan family immediately gathered over from the surroundings. They all stared at the young Star Lord's corpse with mixed feelings. No one said anything. They all remained silent. Although the main culprit of the unrest on the Cloud Plain was dead, no one could cheer up. Instead, the atmosphere became rather heavy. This was because they had learnt a little about the young Star Lord's identity during this period of time. In the end, such an important person had died here, so they all thought about the consequences. Jianchen, what do you plan on doing next? Shangguanmu arrived beside Jianchen and asked softly. She also thought about the severe consequences of the young Star Lord's death. After all, he was the foster son of the 9-brilliant Star Lord, and he was the 9-brilliant Star Lord's only son. The 9 brilliant Star Lord's wrath was more terrifying than any storm of destruction. The Tianyuan family was like an infant before him. Chapter 27:14. The Tianyuan family remained silent. Jianqin's suggestion of moving the Tianyuan family to the Prosper Plain did not excite any of them. Even though the Prosper Plain was one of the 7 great sacred lands of the Saints' world, possessing abundant cultivation resources and an environment that the Cloud Plain could not compare to, they had lived on the Prosper Plain for quite some time. However, they had lived in the Cloud Prefecture for so many years. In their hearts, the Cloud Prefecture was their home. Many of them felt a sense of belonging to this family. Now that they were asked to leave, they did not know whether they would be able to return in the future. This made all the people in the Tianyuan family feel mixed emotions. Moreover, the Tianyuan family was a renowned clan on the Cloud Plain. Especially after the battle this time, the situation on the Cloud Plain would be reshuffled. The rise of the Tianyuan family who had been in the limelight and turned the situation around was unstoppable. If they left the Cloud Plain, all the glory and status that awaited them would leave them as well. Many of the senior members found this to be just a pity. The emperor of the Pingtian Empire, Emo Xingfeng, sighed inside as well. If it was possible, he did not want to leave the Cloud Plain either. No matter how great the Prosper Plain was, he did not yearn for it at all. This was because the Tianyuan family was an existence that reigned over the entire Cloud Plain. If they went to the Prosper Plain, what would the Tianyuan family amount to? Jianqin, we can talk about this later. A mysterious senior has come to our Tianyuan family right now. He helped me in the past, so let's go see the senior. At this moment, Shangguan Mu, Er's voice rang out in Jianqin's head. She told Jianqin through a communication technique, so no one else knew about it. Senior? Are you talking about the senior who just appeared? Didn't he leave already? Jianqin looked at Shangguan Mu, in surprise. Shangguan Mu, shook her head. She looked into the depths of the Tianyuan family. No, it's another senior. That senior is still in the Tianyuan family. I can vaguely sense his location. Jianqin's eyes suddenly narrowed, and his divine sense immediately spread out, covering the entire Tianyuan family in an instant. But after thorough search, he didn't notice anything. My soul has fused with a sliver of true chaotic force, so it's different from the others a long time ago. Even experts several levels higher than me won't be able to hide from my search. It looks like the senior Mu mentioned is probably an extraordinary figure, Jianqin sighed. Jianqin was secretly surprised. Afterwards, he gave Shi some orders and handed over the post-battle tasks to the Tianyuan family and the Dong and province before vanishing into the depths of the Tianyuan family with Shangguan Mu. Shangguan Mu could vaguely sense the senior's location. She took Jianqin through the Tianyuan family and arrived at a quiet place in the depths of the Tianyuan family. This was already a forbidden ground for the Tianyuan family. Only a few authoritative figures could enter, and it was usually heavily guarded. However, the Tianyuan family had faced great danger recently, so the guards had been evacuated. As a result, there was not a single person in the large region. Only a few exotic birds and beasts that had been reared there would emerge from time to time. In the end, Jianqin arrived at a stone pavilion under Shangguan Mu's lead. The stone pavilion was beside a mountain and a river. The mountain was a small mountain that had been moved in from the outside world, while the river was a small lake that had been dug out. The surroundings were covered in greenery and mist. It was an extremely beautiful environment. Jianqin's eyes suddenly narrowed. He discovered with a single glance that there was actually a figure seated in the pavilion. He was a young man in violet robes. From his appearance, he did not seem to be in his 30s. He was handsome and extremely handsome, but he did not give off any presence at all. As a matter of fact, he did not even give off any pulses of life. Even when he scanned with the senses of his soul, he found nothing. His existence could only be discovered with the naked eye. At this moment, he sat in the stone pavilion. A bronze teapot was placed on the stone table. Wisps of smoke drifted out from it, giving off a refreshing fragrance. This was an extremely precious type of tea. Just the fragrance alone was enough to determine that it was god tier at the very least. He sat there, sipping the tea leisurely. Jian-Chin became stern. With just a single glance, he could sense that the young man before him was unfathomable. It was impossible to measure his strength. He had never thought that such a terrifying expert would actually come from the Tianyuan family. I am the patriarch of the Tianyuan clan, Jian-Chin. Greetings to Senior. Greetings to Senior, Shangguan Mu. Thank you for saving my life earlier. Jian-Chin and Shangguan Mu arrived before the purple-robed young man. They clasped their fists and bowed politely. The purple-robed young man did not pay any attention to Jian-Chin. He did not even glance at Jian-Chin. Instead, he looked at Shangguan Mu carefully. He studied her carefully, and a sliver of mixed feelings gradually appeared in his eyes. It's said that the zither of the demonic cry is on you. I want to take a look at it, said the purple-robed young man. His voice was extremely gentle, making people feel like they were bathing in a spring breeze. They could not help but develop a good impression of him. A gleam of light flashed through Jian-Chin's eyes when he heard that. He sank into his thoughts. He could roughly guess why the purple-robed young man had come. He might have come from the same era as the third ancestor of the Taoist sect of Divine Sound. However, Shangguan Mu did not hesitate at all. The simple zither of the demonic cry immediately appeared in her hand. The purple-robed young man's gaze suddenly froze when he saw the zither of the demonic cry. He stared at it blankly as he became dazed. The zither of the demonic cry was like a key, unlocking a memory that had been sealed away in his head for a very long time. It caused a sliver of reminiscence and nostalgia to appear in his eyes, as well as a faint sense of sorrow. Zither of the demonic cry. Zither of the demonic cry. I've finally seen the zither of the demonic cry again, the purple-robed young man murmured. His heart that had remained silent for who knew how long, where it would not waver even if the world collapsed, finally began to stir at that moment. His emotions fluctuated. Afterwards, he waved his hand gently, and the zither of the demonic cry drifted over, hovering before him. His gaze was mixed as he stared at the zither of the demonic cry with great nostalgia. He said sorrowfully, "The zither of the demonic cry is still here, but you're no longer here." The purple-robed young man seemed to think of a sad past. He seemed to be extremely sad and depressed. Shangguan Mu stared at the purple-robed young man with a strange light in her eyes. She asked rather eagerly, "Senior, do you know my master?" She had obtained the legacy of the third ancestor of the Taoist sect of Divine Sound. Even though Shangguan Mu had never seen the third ancestor, or even had no image of her, the third ancestor was her master in her heart. Now that she had finally met an old acquaintance of her master, Shangguan Mu was overjoyed. "I know her. Not only do I know her, but she's also the only woman in my life that I've fallen in love with," the purple-robed young man said softly. The purple-robed young man said in a low voice. His voice was very soft, and it carried a strand of pain that was difficult to conceal. There was also a trace of regret mixed within it. However, the purple-robed young man suppressed all of his emotions very soon, and he returned to normal. He looked at Shangguan Mu gently and said amiably, "You're called Shangguan Mu, right? Since you're her only disciple, I'll obviously nurture you properly so that you can mature in the shortest amount of time possible. Come with me. You can cultivate in peace in the Dao clan from today onwards." The Dao clan? Senior, you're from the Dao clan? However, Shangguan Mu's face immediately changed when she heard him mention the Dao clan. Chapter 27:15. This time, before Shangguan Mu could reply, Jian-Chin declined for her. "Thank you for your kind intentions, Senior. I already have an idea for Mu's future cultivation. I plan on sending her to the heavenly palace of Bishing." After learning that Dao Jiu came from the Dao clan. Jianqin had made up his mind to stop Jianqin from going to the Dao clan. This was not because of his grievances with the Dao clan. Instead, it was because of the primeval divine hall that had been sealed in the world of grand clarity. The primeval divine hall had been sealed up by the Dao Union saint from the aeon before that. The two of them were enemies, so Jianqin had always been interested in the primeval divine hall. He had already made up his mind to immediately return to the world of grand clarity and make the primeval divine hall accept him as its master once he collected the 10 droplets of essence blood. The Dao clan was one of the Archean clans of the saint's world, and it was extremely likely for them to be the legacy of the Dao Union saint. As a result, Jianqin was extremely worried that if he obtained the primeval divine hall in the future, he would extend the grievances between the saint of grand clarity and the Dao Union saint from the aeon before that to the Dao clan. Even though this was not very likely, Jianqin still wanted to maintain his distance from the Dao clan. The heavenly palace of Bixing. The fellow murmured and frowned slightly. He glanced at Jianqin with some displeasure. Originally, he did not want to waste time on this topic, but when he considered that Shangguan Mu was the only successor of the woman he loved, he could only say, the heavenly palace of Bixing is indeed more powerful than our Dao clan. Our Dao clan can't compare to their various resources either. However, Shangguan Mu, if you really go to the heavenly palace of Bixing, they won't waste too many resources on you. In the Dao clan, I will nurture you as a direct disciple, so the Dao clan is more suitable for you than the heavenly palace of Bixing. You'll benefit more from the Dao clan. Mu is extremely grateful for Senior's kindness, but I've already made up my mind to follow Jianqin. I don't want to go anywhere else. Shangguan Mu was not tempted at all. She declined without any hesitation. Dao Jiu could tell with a single glance that Shangguan Mu had made up her mind. She was not interested in the various benefits of the Dao clan at all. If that's the case, I won't force you. If you've thought it through in the future, crush this jade talisman. I'll send someone to receive you. The doors of my Dao clan will always be open to you. Dao Jiu extended a finger, and the corner of a jade talisman immediately condensed before Shangguan Mu. It constantly appeared behind the corner. Very soon, an extremely delicate, palm-sized jade talisman appeared before Shangguan Mu. One side was engraved with simple inscriptions, while the other side was engraved with the word Dao, that seemed to contain supreme mysteries. Creation out of thin air. Jianqin was shocked when he saw this. He could tell with a single glance that the jade talisman had not been completed long ago. Instead, it had been created by Dao Jiu using his ability. Moreover, the jade talisman he had created was no ordinary jade talisman. Instead, it was an extraordinary item that possessed the aura of the ways and a profound power. It wasn't too difficult to create a jade talisman out of thin air. However, to create an object that contained such a mysterious Taoist rhyme, that was almost impossible. Just from this point alone, it could be seen how shockingly powerful Dao Jiu was. His comprehension of the laws of the ways had reached an extremely shocking level. If you encounter powerful enemies in the future, you can take out this jade talisman. Although it's not a defensive treasure, it represents me to a certain extent. However, not everyone can recognize this jade talisman of mine. I believe you can deal with those who can't recognize it with your strength. Those who can recognize it will give me some face. Dao Jiu looked at Jianqin. He did not treat Jianqin as gently as he did Shangguan Mu. Instead, he seemed rather cold. He said, I know you've returned the Inata Tower and rendered great service to the heavenly palace of Bixing. However, for Shangguan Mu's sake, I still have to give you a piece of advice. The heavenly palace of Bixing isn't as great as you imagine it to be. If you send Shangguan Mu to the heavenly palace of Bixing, it might not be a good thing. As for your so-called Tianyuan family, if you want to continue, don't go to the Prosper Plain. I know you're worried about the 9 brilliant Star Lord. You don't have to worry about that. As long as you're still alive, he won't dare to produce any subordinates. As soon as he finished speaking, Dao Jiu's figure disappeared without a trace. He had already left this place. Dao Jiu had left, but Jianqin was unsettled. Dao Jiu's final words had made him sink into his thoughts. He was extremely stern as well. He did not know what Dao Jiu was like. However, with his great cultivation, he could clearly take Shangguanmu away easily, but he did not do so. Instead, he respected Shangguanmu's decision. Jianqin's opinion of Dao Jiu had changed slightly from this. A person like him would never speak without thinking, since he said that it might not be a good thing for Shangguanmu to go to the heavenly palace of Bixing. He obviously had his reasons. Moreover, if the Tianyuan family wanted to continue, they could not go to the Prosper Plain. Jianqin could not help but think deeply about this. Dao Jiu's words clearly hinted that the Prosper Plain was definitely not a place of fortune for the Tianyuan family. At this moment, a few powerful presences descended on the Tianyuan family, interrupting Jianqin's thoughts. The battle in outer space had already ended. Han Zong, Chu Jian, and Yu Chao arrived at the Tianyuan family together. Tong Wuming, Zhou Zhidao, Lian Wuji, and the Lord of the Heavens Link Peak had all returned. They were still needed for the battles in the other regions. Jianqin temporarily tossed Dao Jiu's words to the back of his head. He arrived at the front courtyard with Shangguanmu and saw the corpses in their hands with a single glance. They were Wu Lu, Gongji, and Chang Fengyin. It's a pity that the Gentle Breeze ancestor managed to escape, Hanzong said regretfully. The Gentle Breeze ancestor was the strongest person in the Four Symbols Alliance. Hanzong had used the heaven-severing technique first, which drained half of his martial soul force, and then he was heavily injured. It was very difficult for him to kill the Gentle Breeze ancestor when he was no longer in his peak condition. First senior brother, second senior brother, third senior brother, it's all thanks to you in this battle. Otherwise, my Tianyuan family probably wouldn't have survived. Please go in and rest for now. Jianqin clasped his fist. Let's return to the Mountain Soul. It'll be easier for us to recover there. However, 8th junior brother, the young Star Lord, is dead, so the 9 brilliant Star Lord will definitely be furious. You can't stay on the Cloud Plain anymore. You need to return to the Martial Soul Mountain with us immediately. Hanzong was stern. The name of the 9 brilliants Star Lord gave them great pressure. He was a 9th Heavenly Layer Grand Prime after all. They could only rely on the Martial Soul Mountain to fend off an expert like that. Chapter 27:16. Junior brother, get the people of the Tianyuan family to stay in the Azure Poseidon Palace for now. I'm afraid the 9 brilliant Star Lord will vent his anger on the Tianyuan family, said Chu Jian. It was impossible for the Martial Soul lineage to fend off an expert like the 9 brilliant Star Lord with their strength. All they could do was hide on the Martial Soul Mountain. The Martial Soul Mountain was the final line of defense for the Martial Soul lineage, as well as their strongest line of defense. As they spoke, Yun Ziding and Su Qi returned from outside. Clearly, the two of them had gone through an intense battle. Their clothes were covered in blood. However, this was not their blood. Instead, it was the blood of their enemies. Moreover, the two of them were exhausted as well. This was caused by the exhaustion of Martial Soul Force. What? 8th junior brother, you actually killed the young Star Lord? Yun Ziding and Su Qi still had no idea that the young Star Lord was dead. When they learned about this, they were both stunned. However, that was all. They did not blame Jianqin at all. It was just as Hanzong had said. Their Martial Soul lineage did not cause trouble, but they were not afraid of trouble. This aspect was rather similar to Jianqin's personality. Ha ha ha, well done. How can we not kill him when he's already been bullied to such a degree? If we act fearfully, that won't be the style of our Martial Soul lineage, Yun Ziding laughed aloud. He was extremely delighted as he looked at Jianqin in approval. Call back 7th junior brother and 6th junior brother. The young Star Lord is dead, so the 9 brilliant Star Lord will never just let this go. We need to return to the Martial Soul Mountain immediately, Su Chi said sternly. The successors of the Martial Soul lineage were all very stern. They planned on returning to the Martial Soul Mountain as quickly as possible. On the other hand, Jianqin, the initiator of all this, appeared to be very calm. However, he understood the feelings of his senior brothers very well. In the vast Saints world, there really were not many people who could endure the 9 brilliant Star Lord's fury. After all, the 9 brilliant Star Lord was a terrifying existence who stood at the apex of a world. He was only second to Grand Exalts, who had become the Heavenly Ways. Even renowned organizations in the Saints world would not be able to avoid destruction if they offended someone like that. However, Jianqin was not as worried about the 9 brilliant Star Lord's revenge due to Dao Jiu's information. As a result, he was able to calm down. Seniors, you don't have to worry about me. A senior from the Dao clan came to our Tianyuan family not too long ago. That senior said that the 9 brilliant Star Lord won't touch the Tianyuan family for now due to certain reasons. Jianqin said, although it was his first time meeting Dao Jiu, he believed that a person like Dao Jiu would not lie to him. What? The Dao clan? Don't tell me it's one of those extremely ancient Archean clans, the Dao clan? Hanzong and the others were all surprised when they heard that. All organizations that dared to call themselves Archean clans were terrifying existences that had existed for at least an aeon. They were unshakable colossuses in the Saints' world. They did not respect the world and feared nothing. Apart from Grand Exalts, there was nothing in the world that could suppress them. Seeing Jianqin nod, Hanzong immediately asked, "What's his name?" "Dao Jiu," replied Jianqin. "Dao Jiu." Hanzong murmured. He frowned and thought before shaking his head gently. Although the Dao clan is secluded, they're not completely isolated from the outside world. I've basically heard of all the famous peak experts in there, but there's no name like Dao Jiu. Perhaps he's one of the few people I don't know. However, any Archean clan in the Saints world is more terrifying than the 9 brilliant Star Lord. It's just that they basically live in seclusion, rarely showing themselves in the Saints world. As a result, there are extremely few people who know about their existence in the Saints world. Hanzong paused. After some serious consideration, he said, "Since the person who said that is an expert of an Archean clan, it's believable. Of course, you still have to be careful." Afterwards, Aoyama and Bai Rufeng returned to the Tianyuan family as well. However, they did not stay for too long. After chatting with Jianqin, they left with Hanzong and the others. They returned to the Martial Soul Mountain to prepare for the worst. Jianqin remained with the Tianyuan family. He did not return to the Martial Soul Mountain with Hanzong. After all, the Cloud Plain was the foundation of the Tianyuan family. In particular, after the baptism of war time and time again, the foundation had become extremely firm. What awaited it was its growth. Unless he had no other choice, he did not wish for the Tianyuan family to leave the Cloud Plain. Jianqin lowered his head and glanced at the space rings in his hand. Hanzong, Su Chi, and Aoyama had all left behind the space rings before they left. They did not contain any treasures. Instead, they contained the corpses they had obtained during this trip. "Jianqin, what do we do next? Do we leave the Cloud Plain?" Qing Yishuan arrived before Jianqin. Her expression did not change much. She had not spent much time with the Tianyuan family, so she did not feel a strong sense of belonging. She did not have any attachment to the Cloud Plain either, so she did not care whether she left or not. Everyone in the Tianyuan family looked over when they heard Qing Yishuan's question. They were all nervous and uneasy. Most of them were unwilling to leave, but they also understood that this was not something they could decide. Whether the Tianyuan family stayed or left was all up to Jianqin. This was because Jianqin was the absolute ruler of the Tianyuan family. After a moment of thought, Jianqin called out, "Mo Xingfeng." Patriarch Mo Xingfeng immediately stood out from the crowd and clasped his fist towards Jianqin. Move out immediately. Reclaim all the lost land of the Pingtian Empire and rebuild it, Jianqin ordered. Mo Xingfeng beamed when he heard that. Without a doubt, Jianqin's decision was a declaration to everyone that the Tianyuan family would not be leaving the Cloud Plain. This immediately made many of the important members of the Tianyuan family overjoyed. Of course, some of them were extremely worried about the 9 brilliant star, Lord's Revenge. Protector Shui, Protector Xing, Protector Bai, and Protector Mei, where are you? Jianqin called out. Patriarch, the 4 protectors all stood out and clasped their fists towards Jianqin politely. The 4 of you will assist Mo Xingfeng in reclaiming the lost land of the Pingtian Empire. You must rebuild it as soon as possible, Jianqin said. Yes, Patriarch, the 4 protectors replied together. Shiyu, I'll leave the restoration of the Tianyuan family and the reconstruction of the Dong and province to you, Jianqin said to Shiyu. Patriarch, what should we do with the Heavenly Moon Empire? Shiyu asked. The betrayal of the Heavenly Moon Empire had completely infuriated her. Now that the Tianyuan family had regained power, the first thing she thought of was the Heavenly Moon Empire. You can do whatever you want with the Heavenly Moon Empire. After giving a rough explanation, Jianqin stopped asking about the restoration of the Tianyuan family. He left all of this to Shi Yu and the important members of the Tianyuan family. He brought Shangguan Mu and the heavily injured newbies to the forbidden grounds of the Tianyuan family. He took out various pills to help newbies heal. At the same time, the intense battle in the central, eastern, and northern regions quickly turned around with the return of Tong Wuming, Zhou Zhidao, and Lian Wuji. Under the attacks of the 3 Grand Primes, the army of the 4 Symbols Alliance collapsed in a short while. All the chaotic primes and great elders were slain. Without a Grand Prime, the 4 Symbols Alliance immediately suffered a crushing defeat. Over 80% of their primordial realm experts were slain. In the end, they were forced to surrender to the Righteous Alliance. The Righteous Alliance did not slaughter the 4 Symbols Alliance. They accepted the surrender of the remaining forces. All the surviving cultivators of the 4 Symbols Alliance were taken captive. Chapter 27:17. The Cloud Plain had calmed down, but the damage from the battle this time could not be recovered in a short amount of time. Moreover, the Cloud Plain had suffered heavy losses from the battle this time. Its overall strength plummeted. It was probably the weakest plain out of the 49 great plains of the Saints' World. This was because the number of Grand Primes on the Cloud Plain had fallen to 4. Only Tong Wuming of the Tong family, Lian Wuji of the Fire God clan, Zhou Zhidao of the Cosmic Sect, and the Lord of the Heavens, Link Peak, remained. Out of the 4 of them, the first 3 were heavily injured. It would be very difficult for them to return to their peak condition in a short amount of time. In particular, Lian Wuji burned his essence blood without any hesitation when he was forced into a corner by the 4 Symbols Alliance with his fiery temper. After the battle, he had injured his essence blood as well, which led to a decline in his strength. Even his future breakthroughs would be affected to a certain extent. Lian Wuji was not the most miserable one. Although he had injured his essence, there was still hope for him to make up for it if he spent some time and heavenly resources. Compared to the Lord of the Heavens, Link Peak, his injuries were only minor. The Lord of the Heavens, Link Peak's body had been completely corroded by the power of the curse. He was forced to abandon it. Originally, with the Lord of the Heavens, Link Peak's cultivation, he should have been able to suppress the power of the curse and slow it down. Even though he could not eliminate it, he could last longer. The longer it lasted, the greater his chances of nullifying it completely. However, the situation on the Cloud Plain had suddenly changed. He had only struck out decisively when he saw Tong Wuming, Zhou Zhidao, and Lian Wuji basically unable to fight back against the 4 Symbols Alliance. He no longer suppressed the power of the curse on him and used his full strength to fight against the gentle breeze ancestor, keeping him busy. If it were not for the Lord of the Heavens Link Peak's sacrifice, it would have been impossible for Tong Wuming, Zhou Zhidao, and Lian Wuji to last until the martial soul lineage arrived. At the very least, one or two of them would have died. This was because not only were they weaker individually, but they were also at a disadvantage in terms of numbers. The difference was just too great. On this day, Tong Wuming, Zhou Zhidao, and Lian Wuji no longer cared about healing. They dragged their injured bodies to the top of the Heavens Link Peak. Even Jianqin and Su Ran of the Tianyuan family had come. At this moment, the four top forces that represented the entire Yinzhou were gathered here. Although the Tianyuan family's heritage was shallow and the strongest person in the clan was only Su Ran, no one dared to deny the Tianyuan family's status after this battle, even if they did not rely on the heavenly palace of Bixing. Even though the Tianyuan family wasn't strong enough, they were at the same level as the Feng family, Qingkuan sect, and Fire God family. In fact, they were even stronger than them. In front of the five of them was the Peak Master of Tongtian Peak. This was the primordial spirit of the Heavens Link Peak Lord. He had already abandoned his physical body and existed in the form of a primordial spirit. However, even with that being the case, the Lord of the Heavens Link Peak was still unable to break free from the power of the curse. A green thread extended from his dantian in his soul. It seemed like it was trying to grow out of the Lord of the Heavens Link Peak. The thread was the power of the curse. It was tough and powerful, like a parasite that could not be removed no matter what. Once it truly reached the forehead of the Lord of the Heavens Link Peak soul, it would mean the death of the Lord of the Heavens Link Peak. Peak Lord, this is soul-cleansing grass. It can purify the soul to a certain extent. Although it can't eliminate the power of the curse, it's better than nothing. I also have a heavenly soul pill here. It can strengthen the soul to a certain extent. Peak Lord, you're currently being harassed by the power of the curse, so the more powerful your soul is, the better. Tong Wuming, Zhou Zhidao, and Lian Wuji all took out heavenly resources that were extremely beneficial to the soul. Every single one of them was extremely precious, and they were even effective against grand primes. They were priceless treasures in the outside world. Jianqin also took out some of the heavenly resources he had obtained from the space rings of Luo Mantian and the other grand primes in hopes of assisting the Lord of the Heavens Link Peak. The Lord of the Heavens Link Peak was a respectable person. Jianqin also hoped that the Lord of the Heavens Link Peak could break free from the torment of the curse as soon as possible. These things are extremely useful to you as well, so there's no need to waste them on me. Even with these heavenly resources, they can only make me last for a few hundred years. If I suppress the power of the curse as hard as I can last for over 10,000 years at the very least, said the Lord of the Heavens Link Peak. Heavens Link Peak, Lord said. His expression was peaceful, extremely calm, disregarding life and death, looking at it with indifference. Peak Lord, don't worry. I will find an expert who has comprehended the laws of curses and remove your curse, Jianqin said firmly. Just a sliver of the power of the curse has forced the Peak Lord into such a state. The expert who left behind the laws of curses on Luo Mantian's dagger definitely isn't a fourth heavenly layer Grand Prime. They're at the fifth heavenly layer at the very least. I just happen to know a fellow who has comprehended the laws of curses to the fifth heavenly layer, but his price is just too high. Our cloud plane can't afford it, Lian Wuji said in pity. What does that fellow want in exchange for your help? Tong Wuming's eyes lit up. He wants an innate wonder, Lian Wuji sighed. Lian Wuji sighed. Experts who had reached this level of cultivation no longer cared about ordinary items. Anything that could enter their eyes was extremely precious. Tong Wuming and Zhou Zhidao's faces immediately darkened when they heard about the innate wonder. Innate wonders were just too precious. For example, the Rain Abyss innate orchid of 5 elements and the water cloud iron that the blue sky venerable required were both innate wonders. Even though they were not as good as 9th grade god tier treasures, They were even rarer than ninth-grade god-tier treasures. Usually they were in the hands of peak experts. There's no need for that. Don't I still have 10,000 years? I might be able to find a way to remove the power of the curse during that time, said the Lord of the Heavens, Link Peak. After leaving the Heavens Link Peak, Jianchen seemed rather silent. He had been thinking about how he could help the Lord of the Heavens Link Peak. Only fifth heavenly layer grand primes could comprehend the laws of curses. The only people he could think of were the heavenly palace of Bishing and the Dao clan. Perhaps the two peak organizations did not have someone who had comprehended the laws of curses to that level, but they were completely capable of inviting such an expert with their reputation. Jianchen did not consider the Dao clan at all. As a result, only the heavenly palace of Bishing remained. He still had a lot of merit from the heavenly palace of Bishing. The merit should have been enough for the First Majesty to personally take action. However, he had always treated the merit from the heavenly palace of Bishing as a final protective talisman for the Tianyuan family. He planned on using it against the 9 Brilliant Star Lord. If he used it now, it would be equivalent to cutting off the final path of retreat for the Tianyuan family. Chapter 2718. Jianchen and Su Ran left the central region and returned to the Pingtian Empire in the southern region. Now, all the land that the Pingtian Empire had lost had been reclaimed. With the Tianyuan family as a powerful backer, Mo Xingfeng's authority had stabilized once more. Mo Xingfeng's cultivation was not powerful. He was nowhere close to the divine king's level, yet he was able to sit in such a great position. Who knew how many people felt envious of him? However, no matter how many people felt envious of him, Mo Xingfeng's status could not be shaken. This was because he was personally appointed by the Tianyuan family, Jianchen. Let alone the southern region, Jianchen possessed great authority on the entire Cloud Plain now. Even the Tong family, the Fire God clan, and the Cosmic Sect had to treat him with caution. Jianchen was in no hurry to return to the Tianyuan family. As soon as he entered the Pingtian Empire, he and Su Ran disguised themselves and toured the empire at a steady pace. They passed by many provincial cities. Many provincial cities of the Pingtian Empire had suffered varying degrees of damage in the battle before. Now that the war had ended, many provincial cities were undergoing post-war repairs. As far as the eye could see, the entire Pingtian Empire was brimming with vitality. It was thriving. In the end, Jianchen arrived in the sword-seeking province. The sword-seeking province was also undergoing post-war repairs. The Ling family was in charge. As soon as he arrived, Jianchen could not help but think of Ling Hogong. Ling Hogong was one of the few people who had gained his recognition in the divine kingdom of Pingtian back then. However, ever since he obtained the divine king's legacy, Ling Hogong had vanished. There was no news of him at all. With Jianchen's current strength, he could find Ling Hogong as long as he was still on the Cloud Plain. However, he did not do that. Ling Hogong had obtained God King Duanmu's legacy. That was his fortuitous encounter, but he clearly needed time to digest it. When it was time for him to appear, he would naturally appear. As for Jianchen, he had secretly taken care of the Ling family before Ling Hogong appeared. Although he rarely showed himself, he had warned the Tianyuan family a long time ago. Therefore, under the care of the Tianyuan family, the Ling family's development had always been smooth sailing, and there was no need for them to worry about their own status. In the end, Jianchen returned to the Dong and province. As soon as he arrived, he saw a towering wall rising up from the ground. The reconstruction of the Dong and province was the largest and most intensive project in the entire Pingtian Empire. Over 1 million people had been invested in it. Over 1 million cultivators were involved in the construction of the provincial city, so the speed at which the provincial city was being built was evident. In just a short amount of time, the city walls had become extremely grand. Not only were they even grander than before, but they also occupied a larger area. The provincial city of the Dong, and province also took advantage of the reconstruction to expand its area once again. The provincial city of the Dong and province was completely destroyed in the past, but the rebuilt city is much grander than before. Brother, the provincial city we're building is probably comparable to the imperial city of the Blood Sun Empire. I've never been to the imperial city of the Blood Sun Empire, but I heard from the foreman that our provincial city is even grander and more majestic than the imperial city of the Blood Sun Empire. Exactly. Not only is the Dong and province the greatest province in the Pingtian Empire now, but it's also the greatest province in the entire southern region. You're so ignorant. What greatest province in the southern region? I can tell you that the Dong and province is the greatest province on the entire cloud plain right now. Don't ask me how I know. I have a niece who just happens to be a servant of the Tianyuan family. She specially serves a protector of the Tianyuan family. She heard it from the protector himself. A protector? Heavens, isn't that a primordial realm expert of the Tianyuan family? Similar discussions could be heard everywhere in the provincial city. There were also sighs and sighs of amazement. Many people sighed in amazement at the grandeur and scale of the new provincial city. Although it was not complete yet, the scale left behind an unerasable impression in many people's hearts. Why is this city so large? When Jianchen saw the provincial city under construction, he was surprised as well. When Shi Yu and the others gave him the plans for the provincial city, he had only glanced through it roughly. With Shi Yu and the others present, he did not need to worry too much about these small matters. He only knew that the new provincial city would be rather large, but he never thought it would be so large. This was because the provincial city was indeed comparable to the imperial city of the Blood Sun Empire. The current Tianyuan family does indeed need a provincial city of this scale, Su Ran said calmly. She had lived for several million years and had been to many places. She was knowledgeable, so the provincial city before her was only passable in her eyes. Afterwards, Jianqin and Su Ran returned to the Tianyuan family. Before they could even rest, they were immediately invited to the discussion hall by the upper echelon who learnt of their return. Over a dozen people currently sat in the majestic discussion hall. Most of them were members of the upper echelon and senior members of the Tianyuan family. Only a few of them were unfamiliar to Jianqin. Hua Qing greets the patriarch. Hua Antai greets the patriarch. As soon as they entered the discussion hall, two middle-aged men stood up in a hurry. They arrived before Jianqin politely and cautiously and directly knelt down on both knees. Jianqin looked at the two of them and frowned slightly. Hua Qing and Hua Antai were both late Divine King experts. With their cultivation, they possessed some status on the cloud plane, yet they had actually given up on their dignity and knelt down. Jianqin was rather perplexed by their intentions. Patriarch, these two Hua brothers are from the Heavenly Moon Empire. At this moment, Shi Yu took the initiative to explain. There are three great organizations in the Heavenly Moon Empire. They are the imperial family of the Heavenly Moon Empire, the Earth Spirit sect, and the Taoist sect of Calm Clouds. Aside from them, there's the Hua clan that the Hua brothers founded. Among them, the Hua clan has already sworn a blood oath of loyalty to the Tianyuan family. All those with the Hua bloodline will never betray the Tianyuan family. As a result, I plan on nurturing the Hua clan to take over the Heavenly Moon Empire. May I ask if the Patriarch agrees to this? Patriarch, you must be careful with this matter. The Hua clan is not the most powerful in the Heavenly Moon Empire. If we want to support someone, we should support the strongest organization. Only then will we be able to keep the situation under control. In my opinion, the Gula clan is the most suitable. Patriarch, the Purple Thunder clan of the Heavenly Moon Empire, has had many years of business dealings with our Tianyuan family. They have always given in to our Tianyuan family, allowing our Tianyuan family to pay the smallest price in exchange for the greatest benefit. They have always been the best friends of our Tianyuan family. Patriarch, please forgive me for being so bold, But even if we want to support someone, we should support someone we're on good terms with first. We shouldn't look for organizations with unclear backgrounds. After Shiyu, 2 other founding members of the Tianyuan family spoke up. They each recommended a clan. This was because although Jianqin had allowed Shiyu to deal with the Heavenly Moon Empire, he had also made it clear that the Tianyuan family could not take over the Heavenly Moon Empire. This was because Jianqin understood his identity. He had always been worried about the Tianyuan family's future, so he had always limited the Tianyuan family's influence to a small circle. It would be easier for them to completely take over the Tianyuan family in the future. Naturally, no one in the Tianyuan family dared to disobey him. As a result, since the patriarch did not want the Tianyuan family to take over the Heavenly Moon Empire, the founding members of the Tianyuan family all became active. They all wanted to support a side. Jianqin could tell as well. Shiyu had clearly called someone to invite him over in such a hurry because so many founding members were against her, which made it difficult for her to make a decision. This was because the founding members seemed to make a lot of sense on the surface. No matter how he listened to them, they seemed to be thinking for the sake of the Tianyuan family. You must have received quite a lot of benefits from recommending the other 2 organizations so earnestly. Jianqin suddenly looked at the founding members of the other 2 organizations and said calmly, Shiyu's identity. Not only was she an elder of the Tianyuan family, but she was also the princess of the Shi dynasty. Her status was noble. Chapter 27:19. Patriarch, you've wronged us. You've wronged us. We've always been thinking about the greatest interests of the clan. We would never do something that goes against our conscience behind the patriarch's back. Patriarch, we have worked hard for the development of the clan. We would never do such a thing as stuffing our own pockets. Please, Patriarch, you must look into it clearly. With Jianqin's words, the 2 other senior members became quite frightened. They all declared their loyalty in panic. Jianqin possessed supreme authority in the Tianyuan family. These senior members could ignore Shiyu to a certain extent and refute her, but they dared not to disobey Jianqin at all. Shiyu's gaze swept past the 2 grand elders, and she frowned slightly. She had not thought about this before, as the 2 other clans recommended by the 2 founding members were very reasonable. Both of them made a lot of sense, as if they were making plans for the development of the Tianyuan clan. As a result, she was unable to object to them. However, now that she heard Jianqin's words, Shiyu immediately began to think about it. A cold light flashed through her eyes. She knew that as a primordial realm expert, Jianqin was able to see through many things. His abilities were incomparable to those at godhood, so it was impossible for him to speak without thinking. Since he had said something like that, there had to be something she did not know about. Jianqin glanced past the senior members calmly and did not continue to pursue the matter. When he said that it was not without basis, the founding elders were not powerful, which was why he could vaguely see their threads of karma and make some deductions based on them. Even though he could not clearly see through all the secrets, he could generally confirm some things. When the water was too clear, there would be no fish. This was unavoidable for any large clan, let alone the Tianyuan family that possessed a special status on the Cloud Plain. As a large clan that could influence the entire Cloud Plain, the Tianyuan family would naturally become a target for various smaller organizations to rope in. They would do everything they could to establish a relationship with the Tianyuan family, even if it was just a little. As a result, the senior members of the Tianyuan family, who did not possess great cultivation but possessed great statuses, where they could even influence the development of the Tianyuan family to a certain extent, became targets for various organizations to rope in. People were greedy by nature. Naturally, there were not many people who could hold themselves back before the temptation of great benefits. Moreover, this was before the great cake that was the Heavenly Moon Empire. As Jianqin remained silent, the 2 senior members questioned were uneasy. They were extremely uneasy and worried, afraid that some matters would be exposed. Although they had not done anything wrong to the Tianyuan family, they had indeed accepted benefits from a few organizations. Shiyu, you can take full responsibility for these small matters. There's no need to report them to me. In the end, Jianqin did not probe any further. He stood at a different height now, so his way of looking at problems was different as well. For example, the huge cake that was the Heavenly Moon Empire was enough to cause many ancient organizations to fight tooth and nail over it. However, it was nothing in Jianqin's eyes. As long as they did not betray the Tianyuan family or do anything that would harm the interests of the Tianyuan family, Jianqin could not be bothered with these benefits. He left them all to Shiyu. Among all the senior members of the Tianyuan family, Jianqin clearly sided with Shiyu. Jianqin's words were the final word. With that, no one dared to oppose Shiyu anymore. In the end, the Hua family, led by the Hua brothers, took control of the Heavenly Moon Empire under Shiyu's instructions. The Hua family had become the imperial family of the Heavenly Moon Empire, an imperial family that had submitted to the Tianyuan family and served the Tianyuan family. At the same time, the former ruler of the southern region, the Blood Sun Empire, faced destruction. The only two ancestral emperors of the Blood Sun Empire had died in the central region of the Cloud Plain. Even many infinite primes had suffered heavy casualties, just as the Blood Sun dynasty's royal family was suffering a great loss. The few major powers that were originally suppressed by the Blood Sun dynasty actually joined forces and simultaneously flashed their sharp blades at the Blood Sun dynasty, killing their way into the Blood Sun dynasty's royal palace. The imperial family of the Blood Sun Empire had basically been wiped out. As the current emperor of the Blood Sun Empire, the Blood Emperor's head was chopped off and hung high above the capital. When the organizations took action, they had clearly made meticulous arrangements. As a result, all the members of the imperial family of the Blood Sun Empire were captured. Not a single one of them managed to escape. Apart from the 9th prince, basically all the members of the imperial family were dead. The imperial family of the Blood Sun Empire faced destruction, but the 9th prince remained unscathed. This became a miracle that spread through the southern region. I really never thought that the Blood Sun Empire that reigned supreme in the southern region for no less than 1,000,000 years, known as an eternal empire, would be destroyed just like that. The destruction of the Blood Sun Empire definitely has something to do with the Tianyuan family. Without the Tianyuan family's permission, the organizations wouldn't have been able to work together. But the Tianyuan family sure is strange. The Heavenly Moon Empire is such a huge piece of meat, yet they didn't take it for themselves. Instead, they gave it to someone else. Who knows what they're thinking? Do you think the Tianyuan family is going to give up on the territory of the Blood Sun Empire as well? What do you know? That's called transcendence. Now that the Tianyuan family has transcended worldly affairs, they treat these things like dirt. They don't care about these benefits at all. But the 9th prince of the Blood Sun Empire is quite pitiful. He's all alone. It's said that he's become a vagrant now. Exactly. I even heard someone say that they saw the 9th prince in the Blood Sun Empire not long ago. His clothes were tattered, and his hair was a mess. He looked like a beggar. Sai, the 9th prince, was a peak divine king realm expert, after all. He's actually reduced to such a state now. How pitiful, how pitiful. Discussions about the Tianyuan family and the Blood Sun Empire could be heard everywhere in the southern region. They were filled with sighs and exclamations. However, more people were concerned about who would take over such a vast empire after the Blood Sun Empire was destroyed. This was because the organizations did not do anything after they worked together to destroy the Blood Sun Empire. No one took over as well. They stayed within the imperial capital of the Blood Sun Empire and protected it together. No one dared to cross the line, as if they were silently waiting for something. The Tianyuan family was peaceful as well. They did not accept the territory of the Blood Sun Empire either. This situation triggered the discussions of many cultivators and organizations in the southern region once again. Discussions about the fate of the Blood Sun Empire could basically be heard everywhere on the streets and alleys. It was a hot topic. If it were not for the Tianyuan family secretly acting as a deterrent, if it were not for the Blood Sun Empire and the organizations working together to maintain order, there would probably be a few smaller organizations who would take advantage of the situation and take a share of the profits. A few days later, an edict that decided the fate of the Blood Sun Empire was officially announced. However, the outcome left all the cultivators in the southern region, and even the regions outside the southern region, astounded. They were all extremely shocked. The organizations that had destroyed the Blood Sun Empire announced that they would form an alliance and control the Blood Sun Empire together. The organization would send people to take turns as the emperor of the Blood Sun Empire, changing every century. How can this be? The Blood Sun Empire is not the Heavenly Moon Empire. Even the Tianyuan family doesn't want it. I really don't know what the Tianyuan family is up to. What do you know? Let me tell you. It doesn't matter who controls the Blood Sun Empire, because no matter who takes over, they'll definitely be from the Tianyuan family. As a result, no matter who ends up in the Blood Sun Empire, there's a fact that will never change, which is that the true master of the Blood Sun Empire is the Tianyuan family. Exactly. I heard that the leaders of the organizations have all gone to the Tianyuan family. At the same time, they've taken away over 90% of the resources in the treasury of the Blood Sun Empire. These resources are clearly going to be handed over to the Tianyuan family. Chapter 2720. The Tianyuan family had become the undisputed ruler of the southern region. However, the Tianyuan family did not unify the southern region. After gaining control of the Heavenly Moon Empire and Blood Sun Empire, the Tianyuan family settled down once again. The Tianyuan family did not interfere with the development of the other ancient empires and various divine kingdoms in the southern region either. This did not mean that the Tianyuan family was not ambitious. On the contrary, most of the senior members and upper echelon of the Tianyuan family were ambitious. They wanted to unify the southern region and expand into the other regions. There were even some senior members who suggested establishing a branch sect in the central region. This was because the Tianyuan family could indeed achieve this easily with their current strength and prestige. However, Jianqin vetoed all of their suggestions for expansion. None of them dared to object. Not only were the senior members of the Tianyuan family confused by Jianqin's actions, but even the cultivators and some of the wise people in the outside world were puzzled. At this moment, the forbidden grounds of the Tianyuan family's backyard was beautiful and extremely quiet. It formed a stark contrast to the noisy front of the Tianyuan family. In this forbidden ground, a blue divine palace stood there quietly, emitting an invisible pressure. To no surprise, the divine hall was the medium-quality god artifact that Jianqin had obtained from the Gloomwater sect in the past, the Watercloud Hall. Jianqin stood at the highest point in the Watercloud Hall. He stared at the Tianyuan family through the window as he sank into his thoughts. Jianqin, is there something on your mind? Shangguan Mu arrived before Jianqin. Her voice was gentle and filled with concern. I'm thinking about how long the Tianyuan family can maintain their current glory, Jianqin said with mixed feelings. He was rather worried that if his identity was exposed one day, the Tianyuan family would be hunted down by the entire Saints world. After all, he was the successor of the Azulite swords, a disciple of the sword sect of Violet Heavens from the Immortals world. This identity had been decided the moment he obtained the swords. It could not be changed, nor could he reverse it. The Immortals world and the Saints world were hostile organizations. The previous master of the Azulite swords was one of the 5 sovereigns of the Immortals world. During the last war between the two worlds, he had used the Azulite swords to slay many experts from the Saints world, so they had already formed a blood feud. People who could die to the Azulite swords were obviously extraordinary. It was possible to say that any one of them was a powerful existence in the Saints world and had many disciples. If his identity was exposed, it was possible to imagine just how terrifying the consequences would be. As long as you're here, I believe the glory of the Tianyuan family will continue, said Shangguan Mu. What if I'm no longer here? Jianqin sighed gently. He looked at Shangguan Mu, as a sliver of guilt flashed through the depths of his eyes. He suddenly felt very lost about his future path. He had no idea where Shangguan Mu would go when he left the Saints' world one day. Would she go to the Immortals' world with him or remain in the Saints' world? The current situation of the Immortals' world was unknown. No one knew what would happen if he went there, whether it would be a blessing or a disaster. This was because a sliver of the samsaric immortal exalt's soul had told Jianqin back in Poseidon's palace. Recklessly returning to the Immortals' world before you've become powerful might not be a good thing for you. Jianqin had divulged far too much information from that short conversation. As a result, Jianqin did not wish for Shangguan Mu to continue risking her life in the Immortals' world with him. And as the successor of the third ancestor, it was not suitable for her to go to the Immortals' world either. However, if she did not go to the Immortals' world and remained in the Saints' world, she would also be dragged down by him. As the successor of the third ancestor, she would definitely be condemned for having a person from the Immortals' world as her husband. If you're no longer here, I'll protect the Tianyuan family, Shangguan Mu said firmly. Shangguan Mu said firmly. She stared into the distance with a chilling determination. Jianqin sighed inside. How could he bear to place all the burden on Shangguan Mu? In particular, when he thought about how a woman like Shangguan Mu would have to shoulder the burden of the entire clan in the future, he felt very uncomfortable. I hope I'll have the chance to leave quietly in the future. That way, Shangguan Mu, I will be able to relax a little. Jianqin could only pray inside. However, it was not like he had no trump cards. He still had the heavenly palace of Bixing as his last resort. However, he could not guarantee whether the heavenly palace of Bixing's trump card would still be useful once his identity was exposed. Boom! At this moment, a violent rumble rang out from the front courtyard of the Tianyuan family. Powerful ripples of energy wreaked havoc, directly tearing the discussion hall to pieces. The sudden occurrence interrupted Jianqin's thoughts. His face immediately became ugly, and he immediately used the laws of space to teleport over. The front courtyard of the Tianyuan family had already descended into darkness. This was the laws of darkness of infinite primes. Once trapped, even the divine king would become blind. The person who had done this was a middle-aged man in black clothes. He hid in the darkness and stabbed Shiyu with a sword of darkness. Shiyu wore god artifact armor and was surrounded by 3 layers of light. Every single layer was a defensive treasure. They were very powerful, enough to block an attack from a primordial realm expert. These were all items that her father, Emperor Shi, had given her to protect her life. But at that very moment, a small hole had appeared in the 3 layers of protection. All 3 layers of protection had been pierced through by the black-robed man's sword. In the end, a deep sword mark was left on Shiyu's divine armor. The black-clothed man's attack was simply too powerful. After piercing through Shiyu's 3 layers of defense, the residual power was still not something that the divine artifact armor could completely nullify. A portion of the power still managed to pass through the divine artifact armor and reach Shiyu. Blood sprayed from Shiyu's mouth as she was blown away. She collided heavily against a stone wall behind her and was heavily injured. Seeing how his attack had failed to kill Shiyu, a sliver of pity appeared in the man's eyes. However, he made up his mind and did not launch a second attack. Immediately, he retreated and hid in the darkness again. At the same time, a huge hand condensed from energy extended out from the depths of the Tianyuan family. Wherever it passed by, space distorted violently as it reached towards the man with lightning speed. This was Su Ran. Before her hand had even landed, a tremendous pressure had arrived first, sealing up the space where the man was. However, Su Ran's hand grabbed empty air. The black-robed man had already disappeared into the darkness, leaving no trace behind. In the next moment, the senses of Su Ran's soul immediately expanded. The tremendous senses of a chaotic prime enveloped the entire Pingtian Empire in an attempt to find where the man was hiding. However, Su Ran returned empty-handed in the end. The black-clothed man was clearly an extremely skilled assassin. Although he was only an infinite prime, his ability to conceal himself was extremely impressive. Even an expert like Su Ran failed to discover him. The laws of darkness that enveloped the Tianyuan family vanished with the man's departure. Jianqin had already arrived at a certain time. He currently stood where the man had vanished from with his eyes closed, as if he was sensing for something carefully. Only now did the primordial realm protectors of the Tianyuan family hurry over, but they did not even see the assassin's shadow. The man had moved far too quickly when he tried to assassinate Shiyu. From the moment he attacked to the moment he retreated, all of it happened in a single instance. He moved so quickly that the experts of the Tianyuan family were unable to react in time. Su Ran appeared in the sky as well. She had come personally. She hovered in the air as she radiated with a tremendous pressure. Her expression was very ugly. An infinite prime had actually managed to escape right under her nose. As a chaotic prime, she felt humiliated. In particular, when she saw the 3 shattered barriers of light around Shiyu and the deep sword mark on her god artifact armor, her face became extremely gloomy. Chapter 27-21. Bang! Immediately, there was a violent rumble. Powerful ripples of energy directly ripped through the space there, and the lake below them was kicked up several hundred meters into the air. Genshin's 9-star sword of heavenly ways collided with a sword of darkness hidden in outer space. This was a battle between primordial realm experts. Every single strike possessed devastating power. This time, when they clashed, the energy fluctuations produced by the collision swept away all the water in the small lake, causing the sparkling lake surface to turn into a huge crater. A black-clothed man had been forced out of space by Genshin. He glanced past Genshin with his deep, cold eyes, and a smear of shock appeared in his eyes. His method of concealment was supreme. As long as he hid, let alone infinite primes, even chaotic primes would not be able to discover him with the senses of their souls. Yet today, the concealment he took pride in was actually useless before the sword. An infinite prime had actually discovered him, which filled him with disbelief. It must be a coincidence, thought the black-clothed man. He forcefully suppressed his churning vital energy and retreated as quickly as he could. At the same time, the laws of darkness descended, immediately enveloping a range of 1,000 kilometers. He vanished into the darkness once again. Killing intent burned in Jianshin's eyes. This time he did not close his eyes and search with the senses of his soul. Chaotic force surged within him, and the 9-star sword of heavenly ways in his hand immediately conjured illusionary stars one after another, shining with resplendent starlight. Jianshin directly swung the 9-star sword of heavenly ways at the dark space. As the sword slashed down, the void directly cracked. Under the dazzling starlight, the law of darkness that filled the area retreated. The starlight seemed to possess the power to purify the laws of darkness in the region. Of course, that was not actually the case. Instead, Genshin's strike was just too powerful. It had already surpassed the black-clothed man's laws of darkness. Before the powerful 9-star sword of heavenly ways, the laws of darkness were rapidly whittled away. Genshin's strike did not land where he was. Instead, through the laws of space, it landed in an empty space several dozen kilometers away. Bang! With a muffled sound, the space in a plane several dozen kilometers away shook violently. When the tip of a sword that shone with dazzling starlight swept through the air, a black-robed man immediately fell out of the bloody mist. He vomited blood and was sent flying. Not only was his method of concealment extremely great, but his ability to flee had also reached perfection. When he enveloped the lake with the laws of darkness, he had already moved several dozen kilometers away silently. However, No matter how skilled he was at escaping, he was unable to escape from Jian Chen's eyes. "How did you find me?" The black-clothed man finally could not help but ask. He understood his abilities extremely well. With the various abilities he possessed, even many chaotic primes would not be able to do anything to him if he wanted to flee. However, he had fallen to Jianchen's hands time and time again today, which left him extremely confused. He knew that Jianchen grasped the laws of space and could sense him through the minute ripples in space. However, his abilities did not cause any ripples in space at all. It was impossible to find him with just the laws of space. Suddenly, a powerful pressure spread out. The black-clothed man immediately felt his body sink. In front of such a powerful pressure, the surrounding space suddenly froze. The black-clothed man's face changed drastically. The moment of delay had allowed a chaotic prime to completely lock onto his presence, placing him in danger. This time, the black-clothed man no longer had the opportunity to flee. A huge hand descended from the sky, radiating with a chilling storm of energy. It sealed off the surroundings and grabbed the black-clothed man. Spurt! The black-clothed man opened his mouth and spat out a cloud of blood. In front of this giant energy hand, he was as weak as a baby. He was instantly heavily injured, and his body was firmly trapped in the palm, unable to move at all. At that moment, he was powerless to use any of his unfathomable abilities. Before he was captured, he could use his abilities to slip away from under the noses of chaotic primes. But once he ended up in the hands of a chaotic prime, he could only resign himself to fate. "Who are you? Who sent you?" Jianchen suddenly appeared before the black-clothed man. His eyes were cold. Afterwards, figures flickered behind him. The primordial realm protectors of the Tianyuan family all caught up as well. They surrounded the black-clothed man cautiously. The black-clothed man seemed to be in his 40s. His appearance was extremely ordinary, the kind of person who would not attract too much attention in a crowd. He knew that he would not be able to escape today, but he showed no fear at all. He was ready to die. "Tell me how you discovered me, and I'll tell you who I am," the black-clothed man said calmly. The black-clothed man said calmly. He no longer cared about his own life. What he truly cared about was how Jianchen had found him. This was because he understood his concealment technique far too well. He could understand why some powerful chaotic primes could see through him, but he struggled to accept that an infinite prime had seen through him. As a result, even if he died, he wanted to know why. "Don't you know that I know the laws of space? No matter how you hide, you'll still be in this space. As long as you're in this space, it's impossible for you to hide from me with your current cultivation," said Jianchen. "Impossible. My secret technique is extraordinary. Even if you comprehend the laws of space, it's impossible for you to discover me," the black-clothed man said in disbelief. "Patriarch, I know who he is," said Protector Xing at this moment. At this moment, Protector Xing spoke. Light flickered in his eyes as he studied the black-clothed man's face without blinking. He said, "If I've guessed correctly, this person should be the older brother of the previous emperor of the Blood Sun Empire, the Shadow Prince." The Shadow Prince is someone who hides in the shadows. He almost never appears before the public, so there aren't a lot of people who know about him in the Blood Sun Empire. However, the Shadow Core that the Shadow Prince established is the most mysterious and also the most powerful force in the Blood Sun Empire. Not only are the members of the Shadow Core powerful, but they're all skilled in strange assassination techniques as well. They've always been the trump card of the Blood Sun Empire. With the destruction of the Blood Sun Empire this time, the Shadow Core has basically been uprooted by the clans. However, the leader of the Shadow Core, the Shadow Prince, has never been found. "I never thought he would actually appear here," said Protector Xing. He had personally taken part in the destruction of the Blood Sun Empire, but he had not done so openly. Instead, he had done so secretly, so he knew a lot. "The Shadow Core has been uprooted? Humph. You're far too confident. How can the Shadow Core that I personally established be destroyed so easily?" You only know less than half of the Shadow Core's strength. Tianyuan family, just wait for the endless assassination attempts of the Shadow Core. Ha! The Shadow Prince laughed aloud. A transparent flame burned on him, and his body gradually turned to ash in the flames. His soul was destroyed. He knew that he would definitely die, so he decisively committed suicide using a secret technique. The Shadow Prince was dead, but Jianshin's furrowed brows refused to relax. Protector Xing, Protector Bai, Protector Mei, and Protector Shui were rather stern as well. The Shadow Core had not been destroyed, which meant that the Tianyuan family was constantly in danger. Chapter 27-22. Jianshin returned to the Tianyuan family. Currently, the Tianyuan family was on full alert, preparing for a possible second assassination attempt. Jianshan left Heya, who was a first heavenly layer infinite prime, by Shiyu's side to protect her. Fortunately, Shiyu had many defensive measures on her, so she only suffered some wounds that were not very severe when she faced the Shadow Prince's personal assassination attempt. Under the healing of pills, she would make a full recovery very soon. Sister Shiyu, how are you? Are your wounds bad? Does it hurt? Mo Yen grabbed Shiyu's hand tightly as she teared up from beside Shiyu. She was extremely worried. Sister Mo Yen, didn't I say that I'm fine? It's just some small wounds. I'll heal very soon. Shiyu smiled as she stretched her arms and legs casually. She said to Mo Yen without caring at all. Ever since the day she took charge of all the matters of the Tianyuan family, she rarely smiled. She basically spent all her time sternly managing the clan. She would only smile like that when she saw Mo Yen. You're still saying that you're fine? You even vomited blood. Humph. Once Brother Jianshin returns, I'll definitely get Brother Jianshin to avenge Sister Shiyu, Mo Yen said angrily as she clenched her fists. As soon as she said that, she happened to see Jianshin walk in from outside. Her face immediately lit up with joy, and she abandoned Shiyu without any hesitation. She rushed over to Jianshin and hugged his arm extremely naturally. Brother Jianshin, you finally returned. Did you catch the assassin who tried to kill Sister Shiyu? Brother Jianshin, Sister Shiyu is so heavily injured. You have to avenge her. Don't worry. I've already avenged your Sister Shiyu. Mo Yen, you can go back first. I have some matters to discuss with your Sister Shiyu, said Jianshin. All right, big brother Jianshin, you guys go ahead and talk. I'll look for you guys when you're done. Mo Yen knew that Jianshin had important matters to discuss with Shiyu, but she had never been interested in these matters. As a result, she never asked about the management of the Tianyuan family. The person who tried to assassinate you was a fifth heavenly layer infinite prime. He was the Shadow Prince of the Blood Sun Empire. Jianshin looked at Shiyu and said rather sternly, the Shadow Core of the Blood Sun Empire should still have a lot of strength left. They're skilled in assassination and move about in the darkness. They'll probably cause quite a lot of trouble to the people of our Tianyuan family. Shadow Prince, so it's him. Shiyu murmured as a vicious light flashed through her eyes. She said, don't worry, Patriarch. I will deal with this matter properly. Jianshin nodded before sighing gently. Actually, there are many innocent people in the Blood Sun Empire. If there really are people like them who manage to survive out of sheer luck, let's give them a chance to live. Enough people have died in the war that swept up the entire Cloud Plain this time. Jianshin knew that the Tianyuan family could not be blamed for the destruction of the Blood Sun Empire entirely, as the only person who truly had grievances with him in the Blood Sun Empire was the Ninth Prince. The destruction of the Blood Sun Empire had been implicated by the failure of the Four Symbols Alliance. The Blood Sun Empire was a part of the Four Symbols Alliance. Now that the Four Symbols Alliance was destroyed, the Blood Sun Empire naturally would not be spared. Even if the Tianyuan family did not do anything, the Righteous Alliance would not let them go. It was just that the person holding the blade had become the Tianyuan family. It had become Shiyu. In the next few days, the Tianyuan family carried out a great purge of the remaining forces of resistance in the Blood Sun Empire. They basically mobilized all their forces to search for traces of the Shadow Troop across the entire southern region. All the organizations in the southern region mobilized their forces as well. They worked together with the Tianyuan family, basically turning the entire southern region upside down. The Tianyuan family's actions, this time, truly proved just how great their influence was in the southern region. They could command the entire world with a single call, and no one dared to disobey their orders. At the same time, the revenge of the Blood Sun Empire's Shadow Troop truly began. The members of the Tianyuan family, scattered across the southern region, all suffered assassinations from the Shadow Troop. Some members of the Tianyuan family died, while others from the Shadow Troop died. It was not just the Tianyuan family. Even the clans that controlled the Blood Sun Empire were assassinated by the Shadow Troop. They all suffered casualties. However, the assassinations of the Shadow Troop gradually stopped after a few days. This was because both the Tianyuan family and the clans that controlled the Blood Sun Empire were prepared against the assassination attempts. Every time the Shadow Troop took action, they would pay a price. In just a few days, quite a few people from the Shadow Troop had died, and their strength had taken quite a hit. During this period of time, the number of primordial realm protectors in the Tianyuan family increased once again. This was because the Tianyuan family was now so large that they needed to recruit a few new protectors and godhood cultivators to expand the strength of the Tianyuan family. The Righteous Alliance had contacted Jianshin in the past. They wanted to hand over the northern and western regions to the Tianyuan family so that the Tianyuan family could manage them. The Tianyuan family had the martial soul lineage behind them. The Righteous Alliance had personally witnessed the strength of the martial soul lineage. Moreover, they were only able to achieve the final victory this time and completely eliminate the malignant tumor that was the Four Symbols Alliance because of the martial soul lineage's assistance. As a result, the Righteous Alliance naturally wanted to maintain a friendly relationship with the Tianyuan family by handing over the western and northern regions. However, Jianshin tactfully turned down the offers of the two regions. He was already restricting the development of the Tianyuan family, so he naturally did not want the Tianyuan family to spread their influence in the other two regions. Jianshin did not care about how great of an influence the Tianyuan family had on the Cloud Plain, nor did he care about how much territory the Tianyuan family had on the Cloud Plain. He only hoped that the people of the Tianyuan family could gather in a single location so that they could leave as soon as possible when he needed them in the future. However, after Jianshin turned down the offer of managing the Western region, the Jinjian Empire of the Western region came to visit the Tianyuan family. At the same time, they brought many prodigies of the imperial clan in hopes of forming a marriage alliance with the Tianyuan family. During the last battle, the Jinjian Empire had wavered, which displeased the Righteous Alliance. After the battle ended, the Jinjian Empire was kicked out of the Righteous Alliance as soon as possible. The Righteous Alliance's attitude towards the Jinjian Empire caused some unrest within the Jinjian Empire. Many organizations began to plot their own schemes. Vaguely, they even showed signs of working together to rebel. Chapter 27-23. This was because the two empires were still members of the Righteous Alliance, so they could represent the Righteous Alliance to a certain extent. In particular, the Shi dynasty had close ties with the Tianyuan family. They had an extremely powerful background. As a result, the Jinjian Empire had approached the Tianyuan family in a hurry, wanting to establish some ties with the Tianyuan family. They knew extremely well that after being kicked out of the Righteous Alliance, the only thing that could save their Jinjian Empire was the Tianyuan family. Jianshin did not want to worry about these schemes at all, so he left everything to Shiyu to deal with. However, when Shiyu met with the emissary from the Jinjian Empire, an emissary from the Shi dynasty visited the Tianyuan family, meeting with Shiyu alone first. The emissary from the Shi dynasty just happened to come at a time like this, so the emissary from the Jinjian Empire naturally felt uneasy. Jianshin did not pay any attention to the conflict between the organizations on the Cloud Plain. Instead, he carefully checked Newbie's wounds in the forbidden grounds in the back courtyard. Newbie's had awakened long ago, but his wounds were still extremely severe. It would be extremely difficult for him to make a full recovery. Newbie's sat on the ground in his human form. His face was extremely pale and he was haggard. He seemed sickly. Jianqin, Shangguanmu, Qing Yishuan, and Su Ran were all present. They all frowned, and the atmosphere was heavy. Newbies said weakly, "Under normal circumstances, recovering from such heavy wounds would be difficult, but there would still be a way to do so. However, I never thought that my bloodline would just happen to evolve at that time. Before the evolution had even finished, I was suddenly heavily injured, forcefully interrupting the evolution. Not only did this harm my very essence, but it also damaged my bloodline." At this point, Newbies sighed and said, "From now on, I, the great Newbies, will have to stop here on the path of evolution that I, the great Newbies, have dreamt of. With the injury to my bloodline, no matter how much life essence I absorb, it won't help. Senior Su, you're a chaotic prime. You're knowledgeable. You're not someone we can compare to. May I ask if Senior Su knows how to heal Newbies' damaged bloodline?" Qing Yishuan asked. After all, she and Newbies had both come from the Tianyuan continent, so she naturally felt close to him in a foreign land. Seeing how Newbies' bloodline had been damaged, cutting off his path of evolution, Qing Yishuan felt sympathy for him. Jianqin and Shangguanmu also looked at Su Ran eagerly. Injuries to the bloodline were completely different from injuries to the physical body. They had many divine pills that could heal the physical body. Even if it was to heal injuries to the soul, they could take out the corresponding treasures. However, when it came to injuries to the bloodline, they had no way to heal injuries to the bloodline. Moreover, they had no idea what heavenly resources or methods could be used to heal damage to the bloodline. This was because there were just far too few examples of damage to the bloodline in the saints' world, like Newbies. It was extremely rare. It was exactly because of this that people who could heal damage to the bloodline were also extremely rare. Su Ran thought about it seriously before shaking her head gently in the end. Jianqin could not help but sigh inside when he saw how even Su Ran was powerless. Su Ran's origins were extraordinary. Speaking of which, she was the grand disciple of the Anata, Grand Exalt. Even though she had never gained the recognition of the Anata, Grand Exalt, the legacy she had received was extremely valuable, so she knew a lot of things. However, even she had no idea, which made Jianqin's heart turn cold. Newbies, don't worry. I will definitely find a way to heal the damage to your bloodline and continue your path of evolution, Jianqin vowed. If the damage to Newbies' bloodline could not be healed, it would mean that a portion of his future accomplishments would be forcefully cut off. This was difficult for any fighter to accept. "Master, we know of something that can heal Newbies' bloodline." At this moment, the sword spirit's voice rang out in Jianqin's head. The speaker was Ziying. The moment she spoke, Jianqin discovered their existence. After some time, Jianqin discovered that Ziying and Qing Sua's spirits had become even more condensed, and they were much more powerful than before. As their strength increased, their ability to hide themselves also became better and better. Coupled with Jianqin's cooperation, it was very difficult for Jianqin to discover the existence of the sword spirits, even when he faced high-level Grand Primes. Yeah, Master. Not only can that thing heal Newbie's bloodline, but it can also allow Newbie's bloodline to undergo a major breakthrough and undergo a qualitative change. Qing Sua followed. Jianqin's heart shuddered when he heard that. He immediately asked, "Ziying, Qing Sua, tell me what it is and where I can get it." "It's called the Dragon God's Sovereign Fruit. It's the sacred fruit of the Dragon Clan. All the wounds of the Dragon Clan can be healed. It's basically equivalent to having a second life. Of course, the Dragon God's sovereign fruit can only be consumed by the Dragon Clan. If other races consume it, it will only bring harm. Newbies is no exception." Jianqin was rather confused when he heard that. Since the Dragon God's sovereign fruit could only be consumed by the dragon clan and would only bring harm to other races. How could it heal Nubi's bloodline and benefit him greatly? However, before Jian Chen could ask, the sword spirits took the initiative to explain. Nubis is currently walking the path of the ancestral dragon. Although he's still nowhere close to being a dragon, his bloodline has also broken away from the bloodline of the golden-striped silver serpent after a few evolutions. He's gradually approaching the bloodline of a dragon. Of course, if that's the case, the dragon god's sovereign fruit will only bring harm to him. However, if it's a dragon god's sovereign fruit nurtured from Xianhuang Qi, it's a completely different story. Xianhuang Qi contains the power of creation. As a result, if the dragon god's sovereign fruit contains Xianhuang Qi, not only will it eliminate all the harmful effects for newbies, but it will also bring great benefits to him. It can accelerate the evolution of his bloodline. I've never even heard of the dragon god's sovereign fruit, so where can I find it? Moreover, it's a dragon god's sovereign fruit that contains Xianhuang Qi. Genshin frowned as he felt rather troubled. Master, you don't have to worry about that. Don't forget that there's an entrance to the Xianhuang microcosm in the sea realm of the miniature world you came from before. As long as you can reach the depths of the Xianhuang microcosm, you'll definitely be able to obtain the dragon god's sovereign fruit, said Qing Suo. Genshin's eyes immediately lit up with that. The miniature world that the sword spirits mentioned was naturally the Tianyuan continent. There was indeed an entrance to the Xianhuang microcosm in that world. Chapter 27-24. It's not difficult to find immortal exalts. I do have a very good candidate in mind. With that senior's strength, he should be able to move about freely in the Xianhuang microcosm. However, the Xianhuang microcosm only opens once every 10,000 years. It's only been a few hundred years since the last time it opened. Do I have to wait over 9,000 years before I can obtain the sovereign fruit of the dragon god? Genshin asked. He communicated with the sword spirits through his mind. With a single thought, he could pass on a lot of information. He did not need to speak, and no one could hear their conversation. Master, are you talking about Mo Tianyin? Xing asked. He and Qing Suo placed great importance on Mo Tianyin. Yeah, Senior Mo Tianyin is trustworthy, said Genshin. He was not confident that he could possess battle prowess on par with grand primes in 10,000 years. The only person he could trust at that level was Mo Tianyin. When Shangguan Mu, Qing Yishuan, and Su Ran saw how Genshin remained silent, they all thought that Genshin felt sad because of the matter with newbies. However, there was nothing they could do about the matter of newbies' bloodline. As a result, the three of them fell silent like Genshin. At that moment, the atmosphere in the water cloud hall became rather heavy. However, at this moment, the water cloud hall suddenly shook violently. Afterwards, the panicked warning of the artifact spirit rang out. Oh, no, Master. An extremely terrifying expert has invaded. Shangguan Mu, Qing Yishuan, Su Ran, and Genshin were all surprised. However, before they could react, a rather childish voice rang out. Hee, there's no need to be nervous. I have no ill intentions in coming here. Genshin, have you dealt with the matters on the cloud plane in the past few days? With that, the heartless child silently appeared before Genshin and the others. He was simply too powerful. Even the Water Cloud Palace, a mid-quality divine artifact, was unable to stop him even when the artifact spirit was in perfect condition. As a result, he was able to force his way into the Water Cloud Palace as easily as entering an uninhabited land. The artifact spirit of the Water Cloud Palace could only watch helplessly, unable to do anything. Su Ran, Qing Yishuan, and Shangguan Mu became vigilant when they saw the heartless child. In particular, Su Ran's eyes were filled with sternness. She was well aware that no ordinary Genesis Prime could so easily break into Water Cloud Hall. The cultivation of this boy before him was truly unfathomable. So it is Senior who has come to visit. Genshin, Please forgive me for not coming out to greet you." Jianchen immediately clasped his fist and bowed. Although he had no idea why the heartless child was looking for him, he had saved him a few days ago at the very least. However, may I ask why Senior is concerned about whether I've dealt with the matters on the cloud plane? Is there something that Senior needs me to do? Jianchen continued to ask. He was slightly curious and confused. He believed that the heartless child definitely had a motive for helping him for no reason. "I've come for 2 matters. The first is to tell you a piece of news. As for the second matter, it's based on the first matter. I want you to help me with a small matter," the heartless child said casually. "May I ask what Senior wants me to help you with? However, Junior's strength is nothing to Senior. I'm just afraid that Senior's matter is beyond Junior's ability." Jianchen clasped his fist. The heartless child sniggered. "Jianchen, don't undervalue yourself. Your strength is indeed nothing to me, but under certain harsh conditions, you are an extremely excellent candidate. Thank you for your praise, Senior." Jianchen was extremely humble. "All right, let's not waste any more time. We'll talk about the matter of help later. I'll tell you the news right now. However, due to some reasons, it's inconvenient for others to know about it. Let's talk about it elsewhere," the heartless child said calmly. Then he waved his hand, and immediately a powerful energy wrapped around Jianchen. Afterward, the 2 of them vanished from the water cloud hall. The heartless child did not take Jianchen to a very distant place. He just stayed in the clouds above the Tianyuan family. The heartless child extended a finger, and the sea of clouds before him immediately rippled. 2 snow-white stools and a small round table grew out of the clouds, completely fusing with them. Whether it was the stool or the small round table, they were all formed by the sea of clouds. Clearly, the heartless child possessed the great power to turn something rotten into something wondrous. His abilities were profound and unfathomable. Just the table and chairs condensed from clouds were much tougher than boulders. Moreover, Jianchen could sense that the profound power of laws flowed within the table and chairs. It resonated with the world and possessed the mysteries of order. "Sit." The heartless child gestured at Jianchen. He sat on one of the stools with his legs crossed. With a wave of his hand, a few spiritual fruits immediately appeared on the table, giving off a fragrant smell. He casually picked up a spiritual fruit and ate it in large mouthfuls. He said, "There's a kid called Siyu. You should be familiar with him, right?" "What? Siyu?" Jianchen did not pay too much attention in the beginning, but when he heard Siyu's name, he was immediately surprised. The light in his eyes shone brightly, and he immediately asked, "Senior, do you have news about Siyu?" Ever since he learned that Mo Tianyan had taken Siyu away, Jianchen no longer had any news about Siyu. He had no idea whether Siyu was fine or not. The vast saint's world was filled with danger and slaughter. Let alone godhood experts, even primordial realm experts would die frequently. However, Jianchen still felt rather worried about Siyu roaming the saint's world as an over-god in the past. After all, his relationship with Siyu was extraordinary. This was because Jianchen had carried Siyu in his arms as soon as he was born. They had fled the pursuit of their enemies. They had gone through thick and thin together, relying on each other. Even though he referred to Siyu as his brother, Jianchen treated Siyu as his own child most of the time. It could be said that he had raised Siyu single-handedly, so the depth of their relationship was evident. There is indeed news about him, but his situation is not optimistic. His life is in danger, the heartless child said in a rather muffled manner as he ate the spiritual fruit in large mouthfuls. That seemed to trigger Jianchen's most sensitive nerves. He leapt to his feet. "Senior, what happened to Siyu? Where is he right now?" The heartless child glanced at Jianchen. He was not displeased by Jianchen's agitated reaction at all. Instead, he rejoiced inside, but he showed nothing on his face. He said, "Don't be in such a hurry. Listen to me first." There's a miniature world called the world of the fallen beast in the ruins of the Spirit Sage's world. The Siyu you care about has entered the world of the fallen beast. Of course, there are countless people who go to the world of the fallen beast to train and adventure in the ruins of the Spirit Sage's world. If it were any other time, it would be fine for Siyu to enter the world of the fallen beast. But he just happened to choose the wrong time to enter, which led to a disaster for him. The world of the fallen beast was formed from the death of a 9th heavenly layer Grand Prime. Even among 9th heavenly layer Grand Primes, there were few who could match up to it. After countless years of evolution, the world of the fallen beast has become a miniature world teeming with life. The entire world of the fallen beast is ruled by a race called the Dark Star race. The Dark Star race can be called the rulers of the world of the fallen beast. The Siyu you care about has been captured by the Dark Star race. Chapter 27-25. Senior, what's the strength of the Dark Star race? Jianqin asked sternly. Siyu's life was in danger at any time now that she had been captured. He was filled with worry. At the same time, he thought through all the experts he knew. He wondered how he could save Siyu. However, there was one thing he could not change, which was that he had to save Siyu no matter what the price was. The strength of the Dark Star race. The heartless child looked at Jianqin mysteriously. In particular, when he saw Jianqin's stern expression, he could not help but smile mysteriously. He said, "I'm not interested in knowing the exact strength of the Dark Star race. However, I do know that the greatest expert of the Dark Star race is actually the Dark Star Emperor, who reigns over the Dark Star race. He's a 9th heavenly layer infinite prime right now." What? Jianqin was stunned. He was stunned. When he heard about the strength of the greatest expert of the Dark Star race, he even doubted his ears. Senior, are you certain that the greatest expert of the Dark Star race is only a 9th heavenly layer infinite prime? Jianqin asked in disbelief. Are you very surprised? Who knows how many 9th heavenly layer infinite primes there are in the saints' world right now? If the Dark Star race was placed on the cloud plane, they wouldn't even be as powerful as the Blood Sun Empire. How can they reign over the world of the fallen beast with their strength? The heartless child looked at Jianqin with a faint smile. It is indeed rather surprising, replied Jianqin. The pressure he felt lessened as he gained a better understanding of the Dark Star race. If the Dark Star clan had a supreme powerhouse, it would be very difficult to rescue Sacred Feather. However, Jianqin did not really care if they were only 9th heavenly layer infinite primes. Of course, he knew that the Dark Star clan was definitely not as simple as they seemed on the surface. Otherwise, how could they have attracted the attention of an expert like the heartless child with their measly strength? Don't underestimate the Dark Star race. That's right. The strongest experts of the Dark Star race are indeed only 9th heavenly layer infinite primes. But there's barely anyone in the entire saints' world who can save someone from them, said the heartless child. Although Jianqin was surprised by this result, he was not surprised at all. He asked, Senior, please enlighten me. The reason is very simple. There's a restriction when entering the world of the fallen beast, and that's that you can't be older than 1,000 years old. If someone over 1,000 years old wants to enter the world of the fallen beast, they'll be attacked by the power of the world of the fallen beast. The ancient beast that created the world of the fallen beast was far too powerful when it was alive. Many 9th heavenly layer grand primes were not its opponent. Even though it's dead now, the world of the fallen beast has inherited its power perfectly. There's barely anyone in the current saints' world who can endure the attacks from the world of the fallen beast. Moreover, this is only the first danger. The most terrifying danger has yet to come. The heartless child seemed to be wary of this topic, so he did not dwell on it. He sighed deeply and said, Anyway, even a few 9th heavenly layer grand primes are unwilling to enter the world of the fallen beast. The only way to enter the world of the fallen beast is to follow the laws of the world of the fallen beast. 1,000 years, 1,000 years. Just how many people can break through to infinite primes in 1,000 years? As a result, even though the Dark Star Emperor is only a ninth heavenly layer infinite prime, no one can threaten him in the vast saints' world apart from grand exalts under the protection of the laws of the world of the fallen beast. Moreover, even if a supreme prodigy really does break through to the primordial realm in 1,000 years, they definitely won't be the Dark Star Emperor's opponent. This is because the Dark Star Emperor is also a supreme prodigy. His talent is monstrous, and he has obtained an impressive legacy. His actual battle prowess has already surpassed ninth heavenly layer infinite primes, reaching the level of chaotic primes. As a result, ever since the Dark Star clan went against the laws of the world of the fallen beast and changed their fate, no one who enters the world of the fallen beast has ever been the Dark Star Emperor's opponent. Went against the laws of the world of the fallen beast and changed their fate? Senior, may I ask what that means? Jianqin asked in confusion. The heartless child clearly wanted to give Jianqin a better understanding of the Dark Star clan. As a result, he basically answered all of Jianqin's questions. I'll have to start from a very long time ago. A very long time ago, the Dark Star clan was once a great clan in the spirit's world. A supreme sovereign appeared in their most glorious era, and it was also because of this sovereign that the Dark Star clan reached an unprecedented age of prosperity. They were existences that no one in the spirit's world dared to provoke. The heartless child's voice was filled with amazement, as if he had developed some reverence towards the strength of the Dark Star race back then. In particular, when he mentioned the word sovereign, undisguised yearning and desire filled his eyes, as well as a sliver of fear. The so-called sovereign was naturally a grand exalt. In the saints' world, only grand exalts who had truly grasped a complete way had the right to bear the title of sovereign. It's just that no matter how glorious a clan is, there will be a day when they decline. Even sovereigns will die. In the end, the sovereign of the Dark Star clan died, and the glory of the Dark Star clan came to an end. Without a sovereign, the Wood Spirit clan, who was the enemy of the Dark Star clan, finally moved against them. The Wood Spirit clan was also a great organization in the spirit's world. They were no weaker than the Dark Star clan during their most glorious period. They still had a sovereign, but when the Dark Star sovereign was still alive, the two sovereigns kept each other in check. So the Dark Star clan and the Wood Spirit clan never came into too great of a conflict because they were equal in strength. Once a great war broke out, no one would be able to gain the upper hand. After the Dark Star sovereign died, the Wood Spirit clan finally moved against the Dark Star clan. They slaughtered all the experts of the Dark Star clan in an unstoppable manner, almost wiping out the Dark Star clan. In the end, a small portion of the Dark Star clan hid in the world of the fallen beast. The world of the fallen beast was actually the work of the sovereign of the Dark Star clan. He slew the ancient beast before he died and refined it into the world of the fallen beast. He made some arrangements in there, turning the world of the fallen beast into a refuge for the Dark Star clan. At the same time, he set down the rules for entering the world of the fallen beast, which was an age restriction. Chapter 27-26. The Heartless Sovereign said, "The will of a sovereign is the laws of the world. It's a form of order. The sovereign of the Wood Spirit race left behind his own rules in the world of the fallen beast, sealing the Dark Star race there forever. At the same time, the Dark Star race was restricted from breaking through so that they could only reach the Divine King realm. They could never break through to the primordial realm. No matter how great your talent is, you can't break through this curse. As a result, for a very long period of time, no primordial realm experts appeared among the Dark Star race. The Divine King realm was the limit of their cultivation. However, the Dark Star race clearly refused to accept that. As a result, they have always been thinking of ways to break through the rules of the sovereign of the Wood Spirit race. Through the efforts of generation after generation of Dark Star clansmen, they finally found a way to shake up the laws set down by the sovereign of the Wood Spirits. They paid an extremely great price to sever a small portion of the laws, allowing them to break through the curse that prevented them from ever reaching the primordial realm. However, they can only break through to Infinite Prime. The 9th heavenly layer of Infinite Prime is the limit of cultivation for the Dark Star race. Jianqin finally understood a little when he heard that. At the same time, he gained an even clearer understanding of the Dark Star race. Senior, does the Dark Star race capturing Siyu have something to do with them breaking the rules of the sovereign of the Wood Spirit race? That's right. After so many years of consolidation, the Dark Star race is ready to move again. Siyu was captured because of this. According to the information I possess, Siyu's bloodline seems to be rather special. It's related to the chances of the Dark Star race fending off the sovereigns will of the Wood Spirit race and changing their fate. However, regardless of whether they succeed or not, Siyu will definitely die once the Dark Star race begins to move, said the heartless child. But Siyu is only a godhood. How can he affect the sovereign's will of the Wood Spirit race? Jianqin asked with a frown. The heartless child smiled. Siyu is only a catalyst. It's not Siyu that's truly going against the Wood Spirit Sovereign's Tao intent. It's the power of the world of the fallen beast and the arrangements left behind by the Dark Star Sovereign. However, the two powers are not something that the Dark Star race can control. As a result, the Dark Star race needs to use some special methods to activate the two powers so that they can clash against the Tao of the Sovereign of the Wood Spirit race. Jianqin fell silent after listening to the heartless child's explanation. He carefully sorted through the information regarding the Dark Star race and gradually came to a realization. He then asked, "That should be the first reason why you've come to me, Senior. May I ask what the second reason is?" The heartless child's indifferent eyes suddenly shone with a chilling light. He stared at Jianqin without blinking and said slowly, "The second reason is that I want you to stop the Dark Star race's ceremony. Out of all the prodigies I know in the entire Saints world, only you have a chance of accomplishing this." He was right. Apart from Jianqin, there were indeed not a lot of people who could accomplish this in the vast Saints world. This was because stopping the Dark Star race's ceremony would mean fending off the entire Dark Star race or even the Dark Star Emperor. With the Dark Star Emperor's cultivation as a 9th heavenly layer Infinite Prime and his battle prowess as a supreme prodigy, he was equivalent to a chaotic prime. There really were not many prodigies below the age of 1,000 who could fend him off. A gleam of light flashed through Jianqin's eyes. He asked, "Does the Myriad Bone Guild have grievances with the Dark Star race?" "There's no need for you to ask about that. Jianqin, I just want to know if you're willing to help me," the heartless child said sternly. He clearly attached great importance to this matter. Jianqin stared at the heartless child sternly and said, "Let's not talk about seniors saving me first. Just the fact that the Dark Star race has captured Siyu is enough for me to pay a visit to them. Since the Dark Star race wants to kill Siyu, they naturally have grievances with me." The heartless child smiled when he heard that. Jianqin's intentions were very clear. It did not matter whether he had grievances with the Dark Star race or not. As long as the Dark Star race wanted to harm Siyu, he would never spare them. Moreover, the heartless child had no doubt that if Siyu really did die to the Dark Star race, the entire Dark Star race would have to endure Jianqin's destructive fury. Without a doubt, it would be a great disaster for the Dark Star race. This was because the heartless child knew that with Jianqin's current strength, there was no chance for him to defeat the Dark Star Emperor. However, once Jianqin reached the age limit for entering the Dark Star race, which was 1,000 years, the Dark Star Emperor would definitely not be Jianqin's opponent. As a peak assassination organization in the Saints world, not only was the Myriad Bone Guild powerful, but their intelligence network was extremely great as well. Ever since Jianqin caught the heartless child's attention, the Myriad Bone Guild had already investigated Jianqin thoroughly. Even though it was impossible for them to uncover all of Jianqin's secrets, they knew most of what Jianqin had experienced after he appeared in the Saints world. This included how the daughter of the patriarch of the Mo clan, Mo Yen, had saved Genshin when he first appeared in the Saints' world. In such a short amount of time, Genshin has grown from a deity to such a level. If he's given another 500 years, who knows what level he'll reach. This unprecedented talent. Sigh, what a pity, what a pity, the heartless child thought. As if he knew Genshin's fate, he felt great pity. Senior, there is one thing that I don't understand. Please enlighten me. Please enlighten me, Genshin asked again. Today he had learnt many things that he had never come into contact with before from the heartless child. The more he learnt, the more questions he had. Speak. As long as it's something I can tell you, I won't be stingy. The heartless child was in a great mood now that he had achieved his objective. He did not care about any of Genshin's questions as long as they did not touch on secrets. He basically did not hide anything from him. I heard from Senior that the Wood Spirit Clan and Darkstar Clan of the Spirits world both possess Grand Exalts. Are there any other Grand Exalts aside from those two organizations? Genshin asked. The Spirits world is a major world on the same level as the Saints world after all. Naturally, there are far more than two Grand Exalts in a major world. It's just that ever since the Spirits world was destroyed, there hasn't been a single Grand Exalt in the Spirits world. Of course, this is also related to the fact that the survivors of the Spirits world have left their own world and merged into the Spirits world. The Saints world is not their world. They've left their own world to cultivate in another world, so they're naturally unable to comprehend a complete way to become a Grand Exalt, said the heartless child. In other words, it's extremely likely that there are undiscovered legacies of Grand Exalts in the ruins of the Spirits world. Genshin's eyes lit up slightly. He was in desperate need of 10 droplets of essence blood from Grand Exalts to obtain the primeval Divine Hall. If the ruins of the Spirits world really did contain legacies of Grand Exalts, he did not mind searching through them carefully. The heartless child glanced at Genshin deeply and said, "Don't even think about the Grand Exalt's legacy. It's not something you can find just because you want to. It depends on luck. Even if you find it, you might not be able to obtain it." Genshin smiled embarrassedly. He did not want the Grand Exalt's legacy, but the essence blood of Grand Exalts. This was because he knew that the chances of obtaining a Grand Exalt's legacy were very low. He had once discovered the legacy of a Grand Exalt, the ancient Skywolf, but he only obtained a portion of the fortune there. The true legacy was obtained by the Wolf Clan. Chapter 27:27. All God artifacts and God tier pills can't be brought in. Genshin frowned when he heard the heartless child's final words. Didn't that mean he could not even use the 9-star Sword of Heavenly Ways? The 9-star Sword of Heavenly Ways was his only weapon, as well as the sword he was most comfortable with. Without the 9-star Sword of Heavenly Ways, his strength would decrease by quite a lot. Genshin returned to the Tianyuan family and began to tidy up all his belongings, preparing to enter the world of the fallen beast. He had many god-tier pills and various weapons and armor on him. He had over 30 low-quality god artifacts in total, and he even had 6 medium-quality god artifacts aside from the Watercloud Hall and the 9-star Sword of Heavenly Ways. There were countless other god-tier, heavenly resources as well. He had obtained all these things from the battle this time. They were basically left behind by the fallen Grand Primes and Chaotic Primes. Of course, this was not the extent of the wealth of Grand Primes. This was only a small portion of what Genshin obtained. After all, not all of the resources obtained in this battle belonged to him alone. However, even with that being the case, Genshin's wealth was enough to make many Chaotic Primes green with envy. Even a few Grand Primes would become jealous. I can leave these god artifacts, pills, and cultivation resources with the Tianyuan family. I prepared these things for the Tianyuan family in the first place, so they'll be distributed to the meritorious members of the clan sooner or later. What should I do with the Fortune Jade, though? The value of the Fortune Jade is truly immeasurable. After all, only the Ineta Grand Exalt possesses such a large piece of fortune jade in the entire saint's world. I should be the second one. I can't just leave something so valuable in the Tianyuan family. When he thought of the fortune jade, Jianqin felt a little troubled. The fortune jade was too precious. If news of it leaked out, he reckoned that even the supremes of a world would come after it. He could only feel at ease if he kept it with him. This was because the Anita Grand Exalt possessed a fortune jade of the same size. He had personally seen it in the projection of the heavenly palace of Bishing on the 9th floor of the Anita Tower. It was basically the same size as the one in his hand. The only difference was that one was square, while the other was round. The fortune jade had become one of the 3 treasures of the Anita Grand Exalt. It was as famous as the heavenly palace of Bishing and the Anita Tower, which was more than enough to demonstrate its value. It looks like I'll have to find an ordinary ring to store the fortune jade in. Otherwise, I won't be able to bring it into the realm of the fallen beast. Jianqin sighed softly. The fortune jade was such a precious treasure, yet it was lying in an ordinary spatial ring. If news of this were to spread, who knew how many people would vomit blood in anger? However, there was nothing he could do. He could not refine the fortune jade, so he obviously could not store it in his body. However, the fortune jade was extremely special. No expert could discover its existence with the senses of their souls. They could only see it with their eyes. As a result, even if the fortune jade was placed in an ordinary spatial ring, no one would be able to discover its existence unless the spatial ring ended up in someone else's hands. Of course, the various restrictions of the realm of the fallen beast were useless before the fortune jade. The laws restricted all god artifacts and god-tier heavenly resources, but they could not restrict the fortune jade. This was because the fortune jade had even surpassed all the known god artifacts in terms of quality. It had already reached the upper limit of the laws of the realm of the fallen beast. Although it was of a very high quality, the fortune jade could not be regarded as a god artifact. It was a treasure born from the world and possessed the power of fortune. It was a treasure of fortune. Afterwards, Jianqin arrived in the water cloud hall. The immortal devouring orchid constantly increased its strength on a large scale within the water cloud hall. Several space rings lay around it quietly. Naturally, the space rings contained the many nutrients that Jianqin had prepared for it. Jianqin arrived before the immortal devouring orchid and pressed his hand against a huge petal gently. He sent out a mental pulse and communicated with the immortal devouring orchid briefly. I won't be taking you with me this time. Just stay here and increase your strength. I hope you can give me a pleasant surprise when I return. This was what Jianqin wanted to convey to the immortal devouring orchid. The immortal devouring orchid was unable to help him with anything right now, so he did not plan on taking it with him this time. However, the immortal devouring orchid had never disappointed him. From the moment he obtained it until now, the immortal devouring orchid had already reached the level of an infinite prime. The rate of increase left Jianqin dumbfounded. As a matter of fact, Jianqin even began to suspect whether the immortal devouring orchid would break through to chaotic prime before him. Afterwards, Jianqin left the water cloud hall to be with Shangguan Mu. When Shangguan Mu learnt that Jianqin was going on a long journey, she was naturally extremely reluctant to part with him. However, she also understood that Jianqin definitely had important matters to attend to, so she did not stop him. Jianqin did nothing else that night. Instead, he spent all his time with Shangguan Mu. They made love with each other until the sun came up. The next morning, the heartless child arrived punctually at the Tianyuan family. His arrival also meant that Jianqin's time in the Tianyuan family had officially come to an end. He was about to go to an extremely distant place. It was so distant that he had even left the saint's world and gone to a major world that was once as glorious as the saint's world. Afterwards, Jianqin bid farewell to everyone. After giving Shiyu some simple orders regarding the future development of the Tianyuan family, he left the cloud plain with the heartless child. When he left, He left everything on him in the Tianyuan family, aside from the fortune jade. He left everything on him in the water cloud hall. He only took an ordinary space ring and a few divine crystals with him. The water cloud hall became the place of authority for the Tianyuan family. Under Genshin's instructions, as well as to prevent the upper echelon of the Tianyuan family from being assassinated again, basically all the upper echelon and senior members of the Tianyuan family stayed in the water cloud hall. The water cloud hall became the safest place in the Tianyuan family. The heartless child personally traveled with Genshin in outer space. They did not use interplanar teleportation formations because, with the heartless child's cultivation, he could travel even faster than interplanar teleportation formations. He enveloped Genshin with dense energy as he strolled through outer space with his short legs at a steady pace like he was taking a stroll in the park. However, with every step he took, the surrounding space would undergo a great change. It seemed like he was crossing a starry sky with every step, crossing an extremely great distance with every step. Chapter 27-28. With this speed, I'll probably be able to traverse the entire Saint's world before long. As for the 49 Great Plains and 81 Great Planets, I'll be able to go anywhere I want. There's no need to waste 5-colored divine crystals on teleportation formations at all. Genshin's eyes were filled with envy and yearning as he gazed at the rapidly changing stars around him. In the past, he wanted to travel across planes, but he ended up having a hard time because of the expensive teleportation fees. However, looking at the heartless child now, traveling across planes was like child's play. Moreover, he was not crossing planes right now. He was preparing to cross worlds. I wonder if I'll be able to reach that level of cultivation in my life, Genshin thought, but he soon sighed. He practiced the chaotic body. This extremely unpopular cultivation system had a curse that no one had ever broken through ever since it had been created. That was because no one had ever been able to cultivate this technique to the great perfection stage. According to the sword spirits, great perfection of the chaotic body was equivalent to immortal exalts in the immortals' world, which was equivalent to grand primes in the saints' world. Let's not talk about whether I can reach great perfection or not. Even if I can reach great perfection, I'll still be extremely far away from Senior's level of cultivation. Genshin lowered his head and glanced at the short, heartless child beside him. The childlike person before him was an insurmountable mountain to him. He was an existence that people could only look up to. As Genshin and the heartless child hurried to the ruins of the spirit's world, an ink-green jade tablet lay on an altar in a resplendent divine hall on Venerable Mountain on planet Wando. Around the altar, there was a piece of land that had been shrunk countless times. Mountains and rivers intersected on it, and the scenery was extremely detailed. It looked like a living world that had been shrunk countless times and had been placed here by someone. If someone familiar with planet Wando were to see this piece of land, they would immediately recognize that this piece of land was exactly the same as planet Wando. Every mountain and plain on this piece of land was exactly the same as planet Wando. This piece of land seemed to have shrunk planet Wando countless times and formed a small map after being spread out. The Venerable Mountain happened to be in the center of this small map. The ink-green jade tablet just happened to be placed above the Venerable Mountain. Such a ranking gave people the misconception that this jade tablet was high and mighty on Wando Planet, like a god. Crack! Suddenly, a strange sound was emitted from the quiet hall. A tiny crack had suddenly appeared on the dark green jade tablet. When this tiny crack appeared, it seemed to have caused a chain reaction. With the crack as the center, it began to spread in all directions. In the short span of a breath, it had covered the entire jade tablet. In the next moment, the jade talisman that was already riddled with scars was finally unable to bear the burden and completely disintegrated, turning into countless pieces and residue that fell to the ground. The shattering of the jade tablet seemed to have attracted the attention of someone outside. The door opened and a god king attendant walked in. He looked around doubtfully. He looked around in confusion. but when his gaze landed on the shattered jade tablet, he became completely dumbstruck. Then, as if he couldn't believe what he was seeing, he rubbed his eyes with both hands and looked again. His face immediately became as pale as a sheet of paper when he looked again. Disbelief filled his face. However, he still seemed to be in disbelief. He rubbed his eyes a second time and looked again. At this moment, he seemed to finally have no choice but to accept this horrifying scene before him. Instantly, a strand of coldness arose from his spine and spread throughout his limbs and bones, causing his entire body to feel icy cold. Moreover, his eyes were filled with terror while his legs trembled, causing him to be unable to stand steadily. Obviously, he'd suffered a great shock. In the end, he produced a sorrowful cry and ran outside as if he had lost his mind. He yelled out in panic, "Oh no, oh no! Something big has happened! Something big has happened! The Star Lord has fallen! The Star Lord has fallen!" The words "the Star Lord has fallen" seemed to possess endless magic. Everyone in the hall suddenly froze when they heard that. Shock and disbelief filled their eyes. The news rapidly spread through the Divine Hall, reaching every corner of the Divine Hall very soon. Afterwards, figures constantly flickered about in the hall where the venerable mountain of a saint's talisman had shattered. Experts with powerful presences gathered there. All of their gazes were fixated on the shattered jade tablet. Their expressions had become extremely ugly. Mixed within their expressions was a dense sense of fear and disbelief. These experts were all under the master of Planet Wando. As the master of a planet, the supreme ruler of a great planet, the Star Lord obviously could not be alone. The soul tablet has shattered. That means the Star Lord has died. Impossible. The Star Lord is the Blue Sky Venerable. The Blue Sky Venerable is a 6th heavenly layer Grand Prime. How can he die? It's impossible for the Blue Sky Venerable to die. With the Venerable's strength, there aren't a lot of people in the entire Saints world who can kill him. Something must have happened to the soul tablet. The group of experts gathered here to discuss, their voices trembling, even more so carrying fear. They all found it hard to accept this scene. The news of the Blue Sky Venerable's death spread across the entire planet very quickly. It caused a huge commotion among the many peak organizations and experts on Planet Wando. After all, the Blue Sky Venerable was naturally the most powerful person on Planet Wando as the Lord of Planet Wando. His cultivation as a 6th heavenly layer Grand Prime allowed him to stand above everyone else on Planet Wando. However, even an existence as powerful as him had died. This immediately made many large organizations on Planet Wando fearful and worried. They had no idea how the Star Lord had died and whether he had offended some impressive existence, so they were afraid that they would be dragged into the matter. Of course, many peak organizations were overjoyed as well. The Blue Sky Venerable's death had freed up the position of Lord of Planet Wando. Was this not an opportunity for them? Many peak organizations held emergency meetings on Planet Wando. A few ancestors who had been in seclusion for a long time emerged as well. The supreme figures who had wandered the Saints' world began to return as well. For a moment, the situation on Planet Wando, which had been peaceful for many years, began to stir. Many cultivators who lived on Planet Wando picked up on the scent. They all sensed that a storm was brewing. The 9 Brilliant Star Lord sat in a secret room on the Star Brilliance Mountain of the Star Brilliance Plain. The room was extremely dim, only filled with flickering specks of light. They provided the dim room with weak light. There were many specks of light. They were densely packed together, filling the entire room. As a result, the room seemed like a vast cosmos that had been shrunk countless times. This was the 9 Brilliant Star Lord's way, the Way of Stars. Chapter 27-29. Ever since the young Star Lord left the Star Brilliance Plane, the 9 Brilliant Star Lord had announced that he was in secluded cultivation, working hard to break through to Grand Exalt. But in reality, he hadn't been cultivating. Instead, he had been staying in his secret room. Using his cultivation base, he had been observing everything that was happening on the cloud plane. From the young star lord using the heavenly king of azure brilliances, life-bound plume, to the heartless child saving Jianchen. To the young star lord's death in the end, he knew everything. As a matter of fact, he even knew that the heartless child had left the cloud plane with Jianchen, hurrying towards the ruins of the spirit's world. Although he knew all of this, the 9 brilliant star lord did nothing. It was not that he did not want to do anything, but that he did not dare to. The reason why he had announced that he was going into seclusion was to avoid arousing suspicion. He wanted to remain uninvolved and act like he did not know anything. That way, even if his foster son Tian Yao killed Jianchen, he would have an excuse to absolve himself when the Inata Grand Exalt returned. He only needed to hand his foster son over to the Inata Grand Exalt to deal with. Coupled with his master, the Blood-Tier Grand Exalt, he was completely confident that he could ensure his safety. His foster son, Tian Yao, would become a sacrificial lamb. Although Jianchen had killed Tian Yao, the 9 brilliant star lord still did not dare to touch Jianchen. He also did not dare to show himself. Instead, he chose to remain in the secret room and continue his seclusion. This was because even if he emerged now, he would not be bold enough to do anything to Jianchen. However, Jianchen had killed his foster son. He could act like he did not know about this when he was in seclusion, but once he showed himself, what would he do after learning that his foster son had been killed? Would he kill Jianchen to avenge his foster son and save his dignity, or would he just turn a blind eye? He would not dare to kill Jianchen no matter how bold he was, as even his master would not be able to protect him if he did that. If he didn't kill him, how would the world talk about the 9 brilliant star sovereign? However, he was certain that his dignity would be damaged, and it would be easy for him to leave behind a flaw. If the Ineta Grand Exalt returned in the future and discovered that he had tried to kill Jianchen through these traces, the 9 brilliant star lord would not be able to bear the consequences. After all, Jianchen was the fruit of ways of the Ineta Grand Exalt. Once Jianchen died, the Ineta Grand Exalt's ways would be severed as well. This was an irreconcilable enmity. As a result, it was inconvenient for the 9 brilliant star lord to show himself for a very long time. He even had to sever his connection with the Star Brilliance Mountain temporarily, or he would struggle to deal with the death of his foster son. Heartless child, how dare you ruin my plans? I will never let this matter rest. The 9 brilliant star lord sat in the gloomy room. His eyes were extremely cold and filled with intense killing intent. Right now, he had nowhere to vent his anger, which made him feel very aggrieved. As a 9th heavenly layer Grand Prime, the 9 brilliant star lord had never felt so aggrieved before. And the Myriad Bone Guild. Once I emerge from seclusion, I'll definitely make you pay a heavy price, the 9 brilliant star lord growled as he gritted his teeth. His killing intent became even more intense. Seeing how Jianchen was about to die and how he was about to succeed, the heartless child's interference made all his plans and arrangements go to waste. As a result, he hated the heartless child and the Myriad Bone Guild to the bone. To another side, Jianchen and the heartless child hurried through outer space. Even though there were many dangers in outer space, none of them could threaten them with a peak expert like the heartless child. The heartless child moved just too quickly. In less than half a day, he had basically crossed the entire Saint's World and arrived at the boundary of the Saint's World. This was the boundary of the Saint's World. The boundary of the Saint's World was a region of nothingness. There was no light, no stars, and nothing existed there. It was truly nothingness. Up ahead is the world wall of the Saint's World. Past the world wall is the chaotic sea. The chaotic sea divides the space between the 6 worlds, causing the 6 worlds to be separated. Apart from grand exalts who have grasped a complete way, no one can cross worlds as they please. Even I can't. I can only pass through the tunnel that connects the 2 worlds, said the heartless child. The chaotic sea. Jianchen's eyes immediately lit up when he heard that. He immediately asked, "Senior, I heard you mention the chaotic sea earlier. What is the chaotic sea? Is there chaotic force in there? And the 6 worlds. May I ask what other worlds there are apart from the spirit's world and the saint's world?" Jianqin was very curious. So far, he already knew about the spirit's world, the saint's world, the immortal's world, and the demon's world. He did not know about the other 2 worlds. The reason why he said he only knew about the saint's world and the spirit's world was to reduce unnecessary suspicion. The heartless child glanced at Jianqin deeply and said, "I know you cultivate the chaotic body. Although I don't know where you obtain this cultivation method, the chaotic body is extremely unpopular in the saint's world. There's not a lot of people in the saint's world who cultivate it. This is because not only will it be difficult for people who cultivate this cultivation method to break through to the highest level of cultivation, but the resources required are extremely shocking as well. Apart from a few Archean clans with deep heritages, there's basically no large organization that would spend so much resources to nurture them." Jianqin was not surprised by that because he already knew that the chaotic body did not only exist in the immortal's world. There were still people who cultivated it in the saint's world, but there were extremely few people who cultivated the chaotic body in both the immortal's world and the saint's world. Apart from the spirit's world and the saint's world, the other 4 worlds are the god's world, the immortal's world, the demon's world, and the demon's world. However, although there are 6 worlds, only our saint's world and the immortal's world remain intact. The god world shattered before the spirit's world. The god clan that currently resides on the Godnigma plane is actually a remnant of the god world, while the spirit sages are a remnant of the spirit's world. As a result, the current saint's world can be said to be a collection of the powers of the spirit's world and the god world. In other words, the 3 worlds all belong to the same camp. As for the demon's world and the demon's world, they are led by the immortal's world. They have formed another camp, standing against our saint's world. However, the demon's world suffered the same fate as the spirit's world and the god's world. Their world also shattered, and all the remnant races of the demon's world moved to the immortal's world, becoming one of the 4 peak races of the immortal's world. As for the demon's world, it's already half destroyed. The laws of the world have been damaged and the laws have declined. Cultivation in the demon's world has become more and more difficult. Their experts are nowhere near as strong as our saint's world and the immortal's world. The demon's world will probably follow in the footsteps of the spirit's world in a while. As a result, the only major worlds that remain intact are our saint's world and the immortal's world. Jianqin was very unsettled. This was not because he knew about the god's world and the demon's world. Instead, he had never thought that the god clan that Tai Ta belonged to was actually from the god's world. With the bloodline of Tai Ta's heaven-battling god clan, he was already the supreme king of the god race. He really didn't dare to imagine what kind of role Tai Ta's heaven-battling god clan's bloodline would play in the past when the god world was still intact. Afterwards, Jianqin was unable to contain his curiosity, so he asked this question.